Oh, dang.
The British are going, oh, that's one crazy mate. He's hanging out the helicopter. He's hanging out the chopper.
No, they were cleaning their drawers just like our pilots were, because it was just like, I mean, it was so, because, I mean, they're probably looking left and right, looking for stuff, and they really weren't paying attention in front of them, and the Brits were doing the same thing, and I mean, at the last second, everybody just happened to bank the correct way, so we didn't hit each other head on.
And you guys are flying lights out, right?
Oh, yeah. It's a totally blacked out. Yeah. And then so we were doing these missions like that. And then another night I was coming back from one of the missions, and I see this like incredible place like lit up on the side of this mountain. I mean, it looks like something like searchlights from Hollywood, and it's like, what is that? And they're like, well, that's Saddam's northern palace, and so I'm just like, wow. I said, hey, let's get closer to that thing. They go, yeah, every time we get close, they shoot at us, And I'm like, well, that's cool. I'll shoot back. So we get close to the thing, and I hadn't took any fire yet. And then I'm like, that's a huge swimming pool. It was in front of this house, So I'm like, hey, get me over that swimming pool. And I'm said, you sure this is Saddam's palace? And they're like, yeah, this is Saddam's palace. And I said, get me over that swimming pool. So I take a M67 frag grenade and fire it into that swimming pool. And I'm like, okay, frag out. So they're like, and bank off, and we take off, and it just explodes that swimming pool, just busts it, and the water's running down this mountain. We're looking back, and so the Iraqis that were guarding this palace, they thought there were some Brits that were doing a reconnaissance on this palace. Like, sneaky, whatever, but they knew they were there, the Iraqis did. Well, they thought the Brits did this. So they attacked this platoon of Brits,
Oh.
And, they get this massive.
Did you know the Brits were there when you did that?
We had no idea. And so they attacked these Brits, and I didn't know this till later. I didn't know this till years later. Okay, I'll tell you why. So they attack these Brits, and the Brits get in this massive firefight. Their commander wins this big medal, all this stuff, And so I know nothing about this. Basically, this is years later. I talked to one of these Brits, but it's once I'm at Dev Group, I'll tell you.
Uh-huh. Wow.
You toss a grenade, you don't know the Brits are there, and they get a medal for it.
They get a medal for it, yeah. I start the fight, and they get a medal for it.
Well, somebody had to start it.
Now, I have to ask you, was that a valid military objective, taking out the dude's pool?
No, but it was fun, and we were laughing. The pilots and I were all laughing about it, so it was funny.
Oh, my goodness. Hey, that's your second confirmed kill now.
Hey.
I
think they did kill some of those palace guards, so I'm going to claim them.
Yeah, man. Well, a pool and an asp. So
yeah, that's exactly.
Well, maybe some of the water washed them down and one of them drowned or something.
It may have.
Good, taking them out that way. Hey, look, by any means necessary. So, I don't know if we can top that. Did you have anything that tops that? I mean, you nearly kill yourself. You're hanging out of a Kiowa helicopter with an 8-foot tubular sling, doing the Australian crawl version of, taking out snipers. Anything else we should learn about before we talk about stateside?
No, I mean, we just did, like I said, it wasn't full on like going in and raiding, doing DA missions at this point of the war. I mean, because it was so quick, and then it was like, okay, even the Marines weren't doing anything at that point. And so
what's DA is direct action?
Direct action missions, So, it would have evolved into that if the war would have continued, but it just didn't. And so now we're there, and so we're just trying to find jobs, and so that's what we did. And whether it was once the sniper missions dried up, we would haul, Kurds and trucks to help them, move and this, that, and the other thing. Because the way that the Peshmerga treated us, we wanted to help them, because the Peshmerga are Kurds. So
yeah.
I like the way you said it's like you're unemployed. Hey, we need a job. So, I mean, you guys are just right. If you don't stay busy, they pull you back, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, we were there with the Marines that were from our ship. And so basically we just needed to, you just don't want to sit around. It's like, okay, so we, whatever we could do to help, we did. And so that's basically what happened.
Is it during this time when everybody's looking for Saddam?
No, this is 10 years before that.
Okay.
Yeah, he gets a second chance at this shit.
Yeah. The next time I'm in the Army.
Yeah, which is the proper branch to be in, by the way, HUA. So we'll talk about that. But now, what they said you were a sniper, so I know you go through some advanced training later because you win a couple of awards for doing that. But was everybody trained as a sniper, or did you, when you went through your STT, did you get additional training as a sniper?
No, see, when they say, "Hey, do you guys have some snipers?" Well, we had one actually school trained sniper, and he was a former Marine who went through Quantico's sniper school, and he's still a good friend of mine. And but him and I mean, I grew up shooting and this, that, and the other thing. And I had my M14 with iron sights, and he had a Remington 700 7.62 gun. So we would shoot, and I could pretty much, I mean, out to 200 shoot with him. You know what I'm saying, with iron sights. And so when they asked for snipers, my buddy's like, "Hey," he goes, "he can shoot as good as I can out to 200, and how far are the targets?" And they're like, "Well, sometimes they're 50 yards," and so he recommended that I be one of the snipers. He's like, "Hey, this guy's a good shot, let him do it." And so as soon as I got back from that deployment, they sent me to sniper school.
Can you explain, when you say iron sights, explain for our listeners what you're talking about right there?
So it's you don't have any magnification. There's no scope. You're basically shooting with sights. You're lining up the rear and front sight and letting it fly. So I mean, World
It's
War
not
II.
like the ACOGs they have today
No.
and all the other fancy stuff, man. It's like you line up the rear kind of bracket of sight with the front blade, and it's like get that sight picture and then let loose.
That's pretty much it. And what's funny is when you're going through the training, even now they have them do it with iron sights because it teaches you so many fundamentals of trigger pull and basically front sight. You got to focus on that front sight, whereas now it's all optics and everything, and you don't really get the same level of training unless you know how to shoot iron sights.
Yeah, you got to learn the basics of marksmanship there.
Learn the basics of marksmanship. Yep.
And Murph, I told you this. So when you're law enforcement, you want to keep carrying after you punch out of the job. They have this thing called HR 218. It was passed after 9/11. So if you're former law enforcement, certain amount of years and experience, you can go every year and requalify and get a federal concealed carry permit, so you can carry anywhere basically. And I went back to qualify this time. And it's the first time I ever shot. It was a Smith & Wesson that had the red dot on there. I'd never shot red dot before, and it took me a little bit to get used to it because I was like you. Everything I've done has always been, iron sights. It's always been more muscle memory. So I mean, it was like a little bit of an advantage, but at the same time, I'm going, well, what happens if your optics go to shit or something happens there? What's your fallback? What's your plan? And if you've never trained with iron sights and traditional shooting, it's like I don't want to be stuck there if the optics go out and I've got no other choice.
And a lot of times they dovetail and there's no rear sight. It's total optic, and so I don't know. I don't own an optic handgun right now. Mine's still
I
just
don't either.
iron sights, and because I haven't trained with it enough to when you pull it out and present it, it takes me a second to find that red dot. I mean, because my son he has one, and it was just like I don't know, it felt weird to me. So I guess you get used to it, but.
Yeah, but once you get used to it, it's pretty darn sweet.
Yeah, I bet.
I tell you.
Hey, so before we get into the next part, what's your everyday carry now? What do you like?
Well, I like a SIG 365 XL. That's
He says as he's wearing his 6 Hour Academy T-shirt.
Yeah, we can say I should have known it was coming. Yeah,
I have to plug it a little bit, So.
Hey, I like the SIG. That's when I retired from DEA. I had the SIG 40 cal, and one of my old enforcement groups from Atlanta, as a retirement gift, gave me a Glock 40 cal, and that's pretty sweet too. But I always liked the SIGs.
Well, I've got the 239. That's the compact one. I've got a Beretta Model 96, but the one I like, and I've come to like it, is I've got a Glock Model 23, a 40 caliber. And but that's the thing too. It's just it's a difference in I guess taste, but. I finally got to the point. I said, look, I want the same trigger pull no matter what each time. I don't want to have to worry about having a double action, then everything is single action and decocking. You just want, how can you eliminate the number of things that could go wrong and keep it as simple as possible? So I'm getting to the point now where I prefer things that are all double action because I can train the same way, the trigger pulls the same way each time.
Yep, I agree.
Well, and the SIG's so easy to break down. Easy to clean, get it back together quick.
So is that Glock too. I mean, you basically depress two detents, at the front, and that the whole slide comes off, the barrel comes out, the spring comes out, and boom.
Yeah, but do you know any idiots that didn't clear the chamber and pulled the trigger before they could break the gun down and shot themselves or somebody?
Yeah,
That's the
actually,
downside.
Army Basic Training, Fort Leonard Wood, July 1979, Fort Lost in the Woods, Missouri, Private Blazek, the only guy I ever heard about. You know how, because when you're shooting there during basic, and you fire, we had M16s, you fire them down range, and but you go to leave the range. Okay, charge it, clear it, charge it, clear it. You know, you click.
Mm-hmm.
He's the only guy. After the second time he pulls the charging handle back and pulls the trigger, a frickin' round goes off. I mean, it's like, how does that happen? I mean, how does it? We had drill sergeants coming, I think, from 8 counties away just to get in on the ass beating and the beatdown that was going on that one. It's like
not paying attention.
Not paying attention. But anyway, we digress. That's our third digression. Drinking game. You can do that. So, hey, let's talk, because we want to kind of get into. You went. There is a specific term that you use too, and it's DevGru. So, I mean, you're in. The others are SEAL teams, but let's talk about your transition. Went through advanced sniper school. And you're eventually in DevGru. So how does that happen?
So on our way back from basically Desert Storm, from that MARG, we get a notification.
What's a MARG again?
It's a med float, a Mediterranean deployment.
Okay.
Yep. It's, you're on ships with the whole battle fleet of ships that you go over and stay in the med for 6 months, and then you switch out and another group takes your spot. That way you've got a presence, right there and right outside the Middle East, So anyway, so we flew back from northern Iraq and Turkey back down to the port, and then got on the ship, and then, hey, we're heading home. And so we're stopping basically off of Gibraltar, because we get notified that we're to support a group coming in. Basically, they're jumping in, and so we know who it is. And we don't know them, but we know, we're like, well, who else would be doing that, flying from the States and then jumping in to do a mission, and so a training mission but still, it's pretty cool for us, so they let our Zodiacs down off the side of the ship, and we're all out in the ocean waiting. And here comes this 141, and the guys jump, boosh, land. We pick them up, and get in the boats and head into Gibraltar, And so we're like, all right, well, good seeing you guys. And they're like, no, you're part of this. You're gonna, basically help us with this deal, And so we're like, okay. And so they got us rooms, and we kind of hung out in Gibraltar with these guys, And so our platoon commander's talking to their commander, and we'd been put out, and probably on almost every mission we did in Iraq, we were put out in minefields. Okay. And so, I had to pick our way through these minefields. They had these bouncing Bettys and these little Italian toe poppers and all this other stuff that they just litter an area with. So I'd have to get through this thing, and then basically everybody had to walk where I did. And I was a point man. So,
no, we don't call that point man.
yeah, retard, more likely. So our commander's telling their commander about, hey, I got a guy that's a good point man, and they're like, well, hey, he can lead us into the target. And so we get in on the planning, and they say, hey, look, okay, this is the target, and this, that, and the other thing. So I end up leading this squadron of these guys, from Dev Group into a target. We hit the target, and we exfil, and then we're back at the hotel at the bar. And so we're having drinks.
This is a training mission, you said, right?
It's a training mission, yep. So we're having drinks with these guys, and the squadron. Well, back then it was they were teams. Okay, now they've turned into squadrons. Okay, so the team chief asked me, hey, when you get back, I want you to interview. And I was like, well, look, I've only got one deployment, and he tells me, he's like, well, look, you got more combat experience than anybody almost in our whole deal, and so I want you to interview when you get back. And so I was like, okay, so I get back, interview, and get orders to go to Dev Group. Okay. And so end up.
DevGru is an acronym, so let everybody know. I mean, it's shortened. What's it short for?
It's Naval Special Warfare Development Group.
And formerly known as SEAL Team 6.
That you said that. So
see, there you go. I can neither confirm nor deny. It's commonly referred to as SEAL Team 6, and used to be at an undisclosed location until a certain politician told everybody where SEAL Team 6 was located after the Bin Laden raid. But we won't go there.
Yep, somewhere in Virginia. So
I heard, yeah,
yeah,
someplace where
somewhere
we
up
can
there.
sit and watch it from the comfort of our balconies.
What is
Watch
that?
people.
Damn.
Ooh,
Keep
yeah.
going. Keep going.
So anyway, so I go interview and I get orders for Dev Group, which I'm actually in sniper school when I get this notification and end up graduating sniper school. I get asked to return.
No. You're glossing over. You graduated sniper school. How? As the top.
Yeah. So I ended up top shooter and an honor graduate for sniper school, and then so if you're the honor graduate, they ask you, if you want to come back as an instructor, you can come back as an instructor. So that spring of 1992, I went back as an instructor, and I had one of my students. So they pair you with two guys, two SEALs, and one of them was Britt Slavinsky, who actually ended up winning the Medal of Honor in Afghanistan. So he was one of my, I guess, trainees.
Cool.
So yeah. And so anyway, so after that, I came back Virginia Beach and I showed up over at Dev Group to start the training there.
And that was in 92?
92.
So, how does that training differ with DevGru as compared to what you did with SEAL Team 8, and STT?
It is just way more advanced as far as like free fall techniques. It's a lot more shooting. You'll shoot
Till your fingers bloody?
Yeah, you'll shoot 50,000 rounds just during that training, which is 6 months, and you'll shoot probably 50,000 rounds. And then a lot of in the house training, what it's called CQB, and close quarter battle is what it stands for. And so it's basically what Dev Group's mission is hostage rescue, maritime environment, ships, going over the beach, that's what they do. And so our mission is basically focused on that, and so whereas the other SEAL teams are more focused on a wider array of stuff, they focus mainly on those two missions. And they recruit basically the top 1% of all the SEALs. So
Is that something that's, do you apply for that, or is that one of those things to where they have to recognize you and you get invited?
Well, so what'll happen is they will. It's almost a word of mouth thing, and it was back then. And what happens is, hey, they'll be like, hey, there's interviews for Dev Group or whatever, and then if you qualify to be interviewed, then you've met all the whatever the requirements, then they will grant you an interview, and you can fly out and interview, and then what they'll do is they ask everybody else about you, and so that's kind of how it was back then. I'm not exactly sure how they do it now, but it's somewhere close to that, I'm sure.
So two things. What was the interview like, but what is the most important thing they're looking for when they look for somebody to put onto DevGru?
Well, they really, from what I gathered from it, was they look for someone that's, I guess, a mature, because it's morely it's older guys usually that go there, somebody that they don't have to train basically, and that's not a liability. That's kind of the goal they want to have, is like somebody they can trust. I mean, trust is huge in both the Navy and Army units I was in. I mean, trust is everything. If they can't trust you, then, I mean, you can be the greatest operator in the world, but they got to be able to trust you with everything. So
Yeah. You passed the interview, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, the interview that I sat through for it was more of a formality, because really my interview was back in Gibraltar at that bar.
Yeah.
I mean, because the guy that interviewed me in Gibraltar was on my board when I went to interview. And so it was talking more about the mission we did in Gibraltar, talking about what we did in Desert Storm and this, that, and the other thing. And pretty much, all right, well, we'll let you know. And then,
Was part of the interview how much you could drink and not throw up and pass out?
No, that wasn't part of it. I mean, that was part of Marcinko's interview for those guys back in those days. But they didn't ask me that, so I didn't divulge it.
And you're still based out of Deep Creek, Virginia,
Little
right?
Creek.
Little Creek.
Yeah, I'm still a SEAL Team 8 guy.
So you really don't have to move too far.
Yeah, just down. I mean, a little ways.
Yeah, just a little ways down the road, Murph. A few.
I've been there. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about the training. So what's the thing you do now? You're still SEAL Team 8, but now you've got the interview, you've passed it. How does the official transition happen to Dev Group?
Well, you'll get orders. They'll send you orders. Now you're being transferred to Naval Special Warfare Development Group. You show up over there. Basically, you're at the command now. You get issued all your gear, and basically you'll report here. And you report to a certain building, and you meet all your classmates, basically that are all getting in there at the same time, and fill out some paperwork, go through a psych eval, and your training starts basically. Which is when I was there, it was an 8-week shooting program, and so you're shooting 50,000 rounds in 8 weeks. So.
What kind of weapons
sweet.
are you covering?
MP5s, M4s, and back then it was a SIG 226.
Yeah, nice. Man, that's a lot of cleaning. I tell you, the worst part though. Some people say it's the cleaning that is. The worst part is, and this is the part they always get wrong in the movies. So you can put a stake through the heart of this little gem of misinformation. Is that it's like you see a couple of movies. Guys are not sitting there when they're in the plane, getting ready to jump out at the last second, looking at their magazine and pushing in 3 or 4 more rounds. Like, I got to load my magazine. I got to load, all of this other stuff, right? You got all that stuff done before you get out there, right?
You'd probably be fired if you did that.
Oh, yeah.
If
it's not loaded, it's not a weapon. It's a paperweight.
If I looked over at you and you're like, got your magazine out of your weapon and we're getting ready to jump in, it'd be like, okay, we're going to talk about this when we get on the ground. It's like, what were you doing, bro?
Yeah. There's 2 fingers that get sore when you're firing all that. One is your trigger finger, but the other one, right? How did you, it's loading. I finally had to get to the point I had to get myself some loaders because you get to a certain age, it hurts too much and stuff. But loading those rounds is almost as bad as firing the rounds.
Yeah, you just put a glove on and push through it, man. I mean, because there wasn't none of that back then. It was just, hey, get it in there. And so you'd spend all morning loading your magazines pretty much, and then okay, the rest of the day you're getting it on. But that's like you speak about the thing about putting a few more rounds in there. How about when the guy's like in the house, now he shucks around in the chamber?
Oh, that's one of we talk about that all the time. You people who walk around without anything in the chamber, you're walking around with an empty weapon. You just might as well throw it at the guy because there is none of this.
Getting ready to go in the door and they shuck a shotgun round in. You're like,
you just gave away all your stuff.
Come on, bro. Let's get that done, as soon as you're at your freaking last point of protection.
Well, like we said about the Netflix series Narcos, Hollywood will never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah.
No, they won't. So you get assigned there, you go through your training. So how does it work after that? How big, compared to the other SEAL teams, is SEAL Team 6 bigger, smaller in terms of number of people, number of operators?
So we lost a bunch of guys in the training. We probably started with 36 and maybe 16 of us made it.
Why'd they fall out?
Various reasons. I mean, just performance. I mean, anything. I mean, you think SEAL training, BUDS, is Spartan. This is super Spartan existence. So if you can't run, if you can't shoot, if you can't keep up, if you can't swim, if you're weak at anything, they just, man, they'll ping on that and they'll get rid of you. So, I mean, weakness is not tolerated.
It's pure Darwinism, survival of the fittest. If you're not fit across all things, you're just not going to make it.
If you can't do everything well, then you're not going to make it. So, and they find that out real quick, so they're like, okay, if you can't, I mean, if an instructor can beat you on a run, then there's a target on your back. Or, because even then the instructors will run with you and they'll swim with you and they'll do stuff with you, and so they'll shoot with you, and so, you better be you better be on your game, or there's a target on you. And so, just different things, guys would, they weren't physically able to, you know, do pull-ups with 20 pounds strapped to them. You got to do 20 pull-ups with 25 pounds strapped to you, just stuff like that. I mean, that gets rid of a lot of people. I mean, try it sometime.
Mm-hmm.
No, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Tipping one of my favorite Belgian beers is about as much strength training as I'm going to do. Well, I still do that, but it's like, yeah, pull-ups. No, man. Especially when you're a bigger guy. Well,
And
Murph,
we
I don't
had
know.
some big guys in our class too. And so that was the bane of their existence, was that test. I mean, 25
You
pounds.
might be strong, but you put 25 pounds on top of somebody who's 200, and you're already moving a lot of weight. And that's why that extra 25 may not seem like much, but man.
And the thing is because the reason they do this is, say we'd have like 3 caving ladders. A caving ladder is about 30 feet long. And so you're swimming up to an oil rig and you've got them 3 deep. So basically you got to hook it. A guy like my size has to climb this ladder, basically get up there, rehook it, hook another one. So there's 3 of them hooked together. And now these guys got to come out of the water with all their gear on and climb this caving ladder, which is 90 feet basically, and get up here and do a mission when you get to the top of this thing. So it isn't just about, hey, we're just doing this to get rid of people. It's about, okay, can you do this? Because this is what you're going to have to do, on this caving ladder coming out of the water.
And
Yeah.
being soaked with water adds a lot of weight as well.
Absolutely. And it's a smoker. I mean, when you get to the top of that thing, like I said, I'm a lead climber. So, they'd hook it and I'd be like, all right, well, I hope it holds. And then I would ease up this thing, and I'd get up there and I'd tie it off. I'd be like, okay, I'd tie this one off with a piece of tubular nylon, the thing that saved my life in the helicopter, so that it wouldn't bail off on these guys when the bigger guys would get on it. And then they'd send me up another one. I'd hook another one up the next 30 feet, and then everybody could get up this thing. So it sounds brutal, hey, we're going to get rid of people because they can't do this, but there's a reasoning behind it.
Yeah, you want them to survive. You don't want to put them in a situation where they're going to fail.
You don't want that. I mean, it's like, hey, I mean, okay, what are you going to hang out in the water while we're all up here fighting on this oil rig?
Well, that's the other thing too. If one person fails, it brings down the rest of the unit, right? I mean, you can't have one person dictate the survivability of the rest of the unit because they can't perform.
It's just like skydiving. You get out, and if you can't get in that circle and fall with everybody else and then break away and pull your chute and land with everybody, you're worthless to us. So we lost guys because they couldn't skydive. We lost, shooting test. You got this shooting test, and if you can't pass the shooting test, which is a pretty tough shooting test, then you're out. I mean, just you go in a house and you forget to put your weapon on safe after you've engaged targets, and you do that twice, you're out. You shoot a hostage target, you're out. So, I mean, there's all kinds of just little stuff, that.
Well, this is the elite of the elite.
Yeah. So, I mean, it has to be that way.
Is there a test to become one of your friends? Do you put people through tests?
Just be a good dude.
Or you're out. Yeah. Hey, so now during the time you were with DevGru, can you give us an idea of some of the missions you went on?
So I'll be honest with you. I mean, as far as real world missions, we only did a couple, and it was Uphold Democracy, where we were going to go in. Cedrus had taken control from Aristide back in 94. And we were going to go in. Our mission was to go in. I was a sniper at the time in our squadron. And we were going to go in and shoot all the palace guards so that the rest of the squadron could land and basically take over the palace in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. Okay. So we're basically lifting off of this thing, the carrier, the USS America, and Colin Powell and Jimmy Carter, I think, came down and gave Cedrus like $500 million to leave without a firefight. And so basically they're like, okay, he took the money. So we sat back down, and then it ended up being us going in with General Shelton, who was the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the time, and providing a PSD for him in that mob. I mean, it was a mob environment. They're like trying to flip the car over, and we're having to fight these people off. And so it turned into that.
PSD is a personal security detail?
That's it. Yep. So we were basically guarding
Wait a
General
minute.
Shelton.
So you mean I can go take over a country and to avoid a firefight, if you give me $500 million, that's all it takes?
I feel like taking over a country. I mean,
Hey, Murph, I got
What
a new
year was
business
this?
model.
What year was this?
94.
I thought, and I haven't looked it up. I thought this was all done in the Clinton administration.
It was, yep.
No,
But Jimmy
Carter was doing his kind of being the official ambassador, like he would go to North Korea and other places like that.
Him and Colin Powell flew down there, and I mean, I don't mean to throw them on the bus, but hey, they ended up averting bloodshed, so I guess that's a good thing, But that's what happened. I mean, that's just the facts.
But 500 million U.S. taxpayer dollars to give to some third world despot,
and that's what we were told. So, like I said, I can't go on the record and say for sure that's what they gave them, but that's what we were told. So, and like I said, they averted bloodshed. I'm not putting them down or nothing, but we were ready to go kill some bad guys. So, yeah.
You see me shaking my head here, and you probably don't know this, Kevin, but Javier and I were going to indict Aristide for drug trafficking after Escobar was killed. And that's why, because I was thinking you were talking about the Carter administration. I knew it was Clinton.
No, yeah. I mean, he was not a good guy. Don't get me wrong.
That was December of 93 when Pablo assumed room temperature, and now you're talking just a few months later.
Yeah, we had one of his men came in and he found religion and he gave up the ghost and we boxed him. He passed. The agency boxed him and he passed. And we actually brought him to the United States. This is declassified, so we can talk about it now. And we're going to indict Jean-Bertrand Aristide, the president of Haiti, and get that call through the chain of command from the White House saying, no, you're not. And we try to stay very apolitical on this podcast here, but we all know what happened because down the road, the Clinton administration reinstated Aristide as the president of Haiti. And, and you don't know this either, Kevin, but Javier and I did some contract work after DEA, and we were going down to DevGru for a 3-day training class. It was all nothing tactical, nothing, it was still classified, but nothing tactical. And met a bunch of your guys that, oh yeah, I was on that operation where we reinstated him. And for us, it's extremely interesting. And I know our listeners probably think I'm digressing here, and you're going to have to drink after I finish this. But
no, that's technically not a digression. That's actually, you're making a relevant point. One of the few that you've actually made during all of these 67 podcasts.
Here's a relevant
That's a
point
good
for
one.
you.
Yes.
You see that one? But it's we'll have to talk offline a little bit that too. It's just interesting.
I remember I was on the detail when General Shelton. We went into Cedrus's house, and so Cedrus was the bad guy at the time. He's the one who took over the country, and I can remember sitting under the window of when he's sitting talking to this guy through an interpreter, and he tells Cedrus, he goes, "You'll be out of this country in the next 6 hours because I've got men right outside here that'll hunt you down like the rat you are," and that's what General Shelton told him. And I heard him. It's pretty cool.
For him.
Yep.
Yeah, we were. It was. He was facilitating the Medellin cartel cocaine loads coming out of Colombia, staging using Haiti as a transshipment point on Haitian military bases, and then shooting it into South Florida. So no respect for that guy at all.
He had his guards were outside, and we had guns. They had guns, so we're looking at each other. And they had in a cage, about a 20 by 20 cage. He had a big monitor lizard. I mean, a huge son of a gun, and there were shoes all in that cage. People's shoes. Yep. So
the difference was you guys had your guns, they had theirs. They probably didn't have bullets in theirs.
Probably not, but
they weren't. I doubt that they went through the kind of training that you guys did too. So that wouldn't have been a very long firefight. I have no doubt. So,
so the other thing, really, the big thing that happened there was basically the Battle of the Black Sea, Black Hawk Down. Well, so I was in the team room basically, and I forget, I think the squadron commander came in and was like, and my team leader, his nickname was Dirty, and he said, "Hey Dirty," I said, you want to go to Somalia?" And Dirty's like, "Well, where's that?" And he's like, "Well, it's Africa." And he goes, "What are we doing?" He goes, "Well, it's a humanitarian mission, with the Army boys, And Dirty's like, "Heck no." He goes, "Send the snipers," And so we go on a climbing trip after he tells the commander this. The snipers, they send 4 SEALs, 4 Dev Group guys, on with the Army guys on this mission and getting the biggest firefight since Vietnam, basically, And Dirty is a guy that sniffs the chamber of his pistol like every morning to wake up. I mean, that's how how serious he is about wanting to get it on, And so, and once that happened, it was just, I mean, he was inconsolable, But so that happened while I was there, and then those guys came back. They all got silver stars, and I'm still friends with them, and so. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, ours is mostly training, and then it's just pretty lean back in those days, because real risk adverse, the Clinton administration.
But before you go too far, we always honor people. Look, because I had the chance to meet and get the book from Michael Durant. He was one of the Black Hawk pilots that two Army guys saved, Master Sergeant Gary Gordon and Sergeant First Class Randall Shugart. These guys did what we would consider the most unlikely thing, but they went into that to save everybody, knowing that they were going to lose their lives. They were not going to win that firefight, and they took out an inordinate number of people. They both won the Medal of Honor. But the thing that chaps my ass to this day is the guy we went there to take out. Guess what? We ended up making friends with him. 2 days later?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Should have put a bullet through that guy's brain, made him room temperature, and at least even the score a little bit. What they did to our Rangers, what they did to our Special Forces people, the way they treated our folks over there, we just should have turned that place into a fucking parking lot.
Yeah, it was pretty much a slap in the face to the guys that were there. And then fast forward, when I was in the Army, all of those guys that was my outfit. That was my same squadron. That was those guys that was in that, and so, I mean, to know those guys and be friend with those guys now, it's just kind of like, man, I mean, because all those guys are on the wall in our squadron, and so it's a pretty sad deal.
When JP and I were in Medellin, they have, had DevGru and Delta there with us for 18 months. And a lot of the guys we worked with, I think they were coming in on 60-day TDYs, and then they were rotating out over to Mogadishu. And some guys we saw come back, and I told you on the pre-call, Kevin, that there was a DevGru guy from West Virginia. Sorry, I can't remember his name now, but I understand he was one of the guys that was killed over there.
Okay.
But that's why I'm so excited to have you on the show, because, had the opportunity to work with some of your predecessors in both agencies. And we, to this day, we were just in Alabama speaking at a law enforcement conference 2 days ago. And we make a point of telling everybody, if Javier and I are ever kidnapped, we want either DevGru or Delta coming to save us, because I've seen what you guys can do, and it's phenomenal. I mean, I actually trust you with my life. It's just amazing what you guys have accomplished.
Well, we would hope so.
No, Jeff, you're being humble now.
Well, let's get past your humbleness, and let's talk about some things here too, because you didn't obviously retire from the Navy. So tell us about your decision. You were in DevGru for about 3 years?
Yeah, well, I basically, when everything was said and done, I separated in 96. I mean, my reserve time and all that, I was out in 96. Okay. It was just one of those. I had two small kids at the time. I mean, one born in 93, one born in 95. And I don't know, I was in to go do my job, basically to go, hunt bad guys and save the world, and so we weren't doing a whole lot of that. We were doing a lot of skydiving and drinking and training and so I don't know. I just felt like it was time for me to try to go do something else that, if this is what my career was going to be, I'd rather go, and I'm a country boy. I'd rather be home and hunting and fishing and living life, rather than being gone from my family all the time.
Yeah, and like you say, it's one thing to be gone, but you're operational. You're actually doing missions. Things are being accomplished. But it's another thing is you almost get to the point you get training fatigue, right? How long can you train before you actually pull the trigger and do something?
Yeah, my hat's off to the guys that stuck it out. I mean, I got out, and I almost feel guilty about some of the guys. They stuck it out, and they just stayed and then ended up, they were the leadership actually when the war started. which I'm glad I didn't, because I was just a nug when the war started. So I got to come from the ground up, from the beginning of the war to basically till it.
What's a nug?
Basically a nobody. I was, I was
Kind of a grunt, you mean?
Yeah, just kind of because by the time that the war started, all my people that were in my era were master chiefs and senior chiefs and all that in the Navy. So they were in charge of, the squadrons and stuff. So when it came to kicking doors and going on target and this, that, and the other thing, they weren't doing that hardly anymore. It was, it was more, hey, they're in charge. But I went back in the military, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, as an E5. So, I wasn't in charge of anybody.
But there's some advantages to that. But let's talk about that, because you talk about you got out and you liked hunting and fishing. You didn't let that go to waste. You went back to doing some hunting and fishing, but in a law enforcement role.
I did, yeah. I worked with my dad for a little while, and I was waiting on I applied to be a wildlife officer in North Carolina, because you didn't need a college degree. But most of them had college degrees. You was either college degree or you had military, and so you weren't really competitive if you didn't have one or the other. But North Carolina didn't require it. So I applied, and I was just kind of waiting on the interview process and all that. I was working with my dad, who owns a hosiery mill. He bleaches and dyes socks for like Kmart and Walmart and all that, and he doesn't do it anymore, but back then he did. And so I was working with him. I was doing construction work with two old carpenters in my hometown, and just kind of doing whatever I had to do, till I got this job. And because I wasn't retired or anything, I wasn't making money, from the military or anything like that. So applied for the wildlife, went down, did their PT test and all that, and ended up getting an offer to go to school in May of 97. And so, yep. So I started my wildlife school.
So, so when you got on, had this crossed your mind when you got out of the Navy, out of DevGru? It's like you still got an action addiction, right? You want to be doing something. I don't foresee you, after doing all of this, of you just going to be a nice little farmer hoeing your corn and tending your rows. You wanted to be involved in something, right?
Yeah, I just felt like I hadn't done everything I was supposed to do. I mean, it was just one of those. I wanted to serve still in a capacity. I loved hunting and fishing, and so I didn't really want to be just a regular police officer, dealing with domestics and all that. But it was something that really, I guess the old saying is, find what you love what you do, or whatever, a job.
And you'll never work another day in your life.
Yeah, and you'll never work another day in your life. So, I mean, as a wildlife, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I mean, I have nothing but good things to say about my time as a wildlife officer.
Well, let's talk about the PT test to get on the wildlife, because that had to be just like really, really tough.
They take you out to the ocean?
No, I'll be honest with you, though. I mean, it was not, I don't know what it is now, but back then it was, you're bench pressing, you're running, and push-ups, and it's pretty close. And you got this step test where you do this thing where you're stepping up on a thing, and then they test your pulse, to see where your pulse is on this thing, And so, I mean, that was a little different, but and then once you got into school, I mean, we started the school we were at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And so we're in a dorm room that's where you started it, and you're doing PT every day. And the guy running the PT was an animal, and so, and you're laying, it's cold. I mean, the track is wet, it's rain, and everybody's soaking wet.
Are you having flashbacks at this point?
Well, here's what I'm thinking. I'm like, I'm 27 years old, and all these college kids and stuff. I mean, I'm just thinking, man, I mean, they're pretty tough. I mean, but I mean, they've never done anything like this, and I mean, we lost people, in this school, and it was just like, I mean, but my hat's off to them. I mean, they suffered through that, but like I said, I just really enjoyed my time.
Well, a lot of guys that take the wildlife job, whether it's Department of Natural Resources or wherever they call it in the state you're in, are good old boys that, they've grown up hunting and fishing. They know the woods. They're in decent shape, because they do spend so much time out in the woods.
Well, and the other thing too is when you're out there, you're out there by yourself. You don't a lot of these places you don't work in teams. Like we had Mike Neal on. We had the Arkansas Game and Fish officer that got into the shootout with the two sovereign citizens. You're out there by yourself all the time, and it's actually a very dangerous job. And
Mm-hmm.
you know why? Because everybody you deal with, good chance that they're going to be armed.
Well, and not only that, when you're talking about dealing with a drunk driver is bad enough, but when you're dealing with a drunk boater and you're both on boats and you're fighting with this guy on a boat, you're going in the water, and with my background, I'm like, well, I'm good going in the water. We'll go to the bottom of this lake is what we're going to do. I'm just going to swim you to the bottom of this lake, and then you're going to let go of me.
It's going to be like a crocodile, the thrash, the death squirrel. I got you, pal.
But it's and just because you're laying on bear bait, you're going into the mountains. We go into Pisgah, and we go in there and stay all night, laying, waiting for them to come and release their hounds on bears off of like 4 foot deep honey buns, And it's just it was pretty close, kind of, to what I'd been doing. You're chasing guys basically with no lights on. They don't do that anymore, of course, but you be chasing guys with no lights on, flick your blue lights on, and dude jumps out of the driver's seat or passenger seat with an AK-47, and then he takes off running through the woods. You're just, oh yeah, so it's basically, you're getting it on, just in a different capacity, and so, I just take off running after him.
Look at his eyes light up when he said that. He jumped out with an AK-47. It's on.
Yes. And I ended up chasing this guy through the woods. I pointed my pistol at the driver, and I told him, I said, don't move. And he goes, I ain't going nowhere. And so I just took off after this guy, and I turned my flashlight off, and I'm just running after him. And luckily he was a little drunk. So he'd stop and turn around, and I'd just get behind a tree, and then he'd keep running, and then he could hear me a little bit, and then eventually I got so close to him that I kicked his foot behind his other foot, and he landed on top of that AK. I think it was an SKS. Either way, it's an assault rifle. So he's got his hands on this SKS, and I'm on his back now, and I've got my gun in the back of his head, and I'm just like, hey, I said, show me your hands, and he mumbles something, and I'm like, hey, I need you to show me your hands, and he won't do it. So I had a Beretta 92F, I think, a 40 cal. So I cocked the hammer on that thing. He showed me his hands. And so, but you get in these circumstances like that, and you are by yourself.
Yep.
So my hat's off to them, man. They got a tough job.
Absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
Now, when you joined, though, they probably saw, from when you filled out the application and stuff, you were in the Navy. But did you disclose DevGru?
No, I don't think so. It was just you're a SEAL, because
but you disclosed the fact you were a SEAL, though.
Yeah, you have to, hey, what were you, and this, that, and the other thing. What'd you do? Well, I was Naval Special Warfare, and it's just like me saying Dev Group. You know what Dev Group is, and so they know what Naval Special Warfare is. It's like, okay, well, it's SEALs, and so, but yeah, they knew that what I was.
Did any of the people in your class appreciate what you had been through or the training you'd been through? Did they understand, or how much did you disclose of that?
I guess. I had to box a couple guys, and they appreciated it. But no, the guys, I'm telling you, it was just a really good experience. We went to driving schools. We went to the North Carolina Highway Patrol driving school. They were great. The firearms training was really good. It was just a great experience. For any young person, I would recommend it if you want to go and make a difference. And, when they're talking about saving the planet and all that, these guys do. By catching bad guys and by, doing what they do, they definitely protect not only the people, but, the planet and everything else.
It's a whole lot more just going out and checking somebody that's fishing on the bank, see if they got a license. It's
Absolutely.
a lot more to it than that.
You've watched them a while before you've checked them.
Yeah. He took off his boots. He's in his socks, but this time
That's a really good tactic.
But this time he brings water and food with him in case he has to watch a guy for more than 24 hours.
Absolutely. Yep.
Hey, but I got to tell you though, too. You're right, Murph. I mean, some of them they got a bad rap because we had one guy. I won't mention his name, but fish and wildlife guy, and his thing was we had the Arkansas River, not the Arkansas, but the Arkansas River. You would never have any water in there except when it was you have a big flood or a bunch of rain or something would happen, and so the water was maybe less than knee deep, and there were people out there. He went out and started writing tickets left and right to these people for not having a personal flotation device.
Oh,
And I'm going, that's like me stopping everybody for having a tag light out and writing them for no tag light. I mean, at some
well,
point, it's like,
Yeah,
but
unfortunately,
somebody's
have
got to
guys like that.
clean up all those chicken feathers floating around out there from all the chicken shit that was just going on.
but that's the same thing with anything. But to your point though, I ended up getting to know the head of the Alaska State Troopers at a lot of the Chiefs of Police conference, and they had their Alaska State Troopers also has the wildlife folks. And to see what those guys would do, when the Nat Geo would have the specials and those guys would be there flying their planes and watching what people are doing. To your point, it's natural resources. It's like you want to protect the natural resources of the planet, be good stewards of the land that you're on, and don't let people go out and do stuff, which is, we're, I'm not getting off on a soapbox, but it's more making a statement. It's like, we've got to be careful because my wife's a big gardener. We feed the birds, and we're huge advocates about planting the type of stuff that brings butterflies in and hummingbirds and things like that. And to see what people are doing that have no appreciation for the world around them, these fertilizers they're using, these pesticides that are just killing off untold numbers of butterflies and things like it, just breaks my heart.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, during my time there, we did a huge sting where they were killing black bears here in western North Carolina by the boatload, and just all they do is cut their gallbladder and their paws off. And so they were selling them to the market over China, and they'd have freezers full of these things. And so that was our main focus back then, was stopping that ring of all that. So
Hey, did you ever get into a situation that was as hairy as anything, whether you were with wildlife, as hairy as anything you'd been when you were in the SEALs?
I don't think so. I mean, I had a different appreciation for, and I was a little older too, so I kind of could, you know what I'm saying? I kind of felt like I knew when a situation was getting ready to go sideways, and I could get in front of it, whereas, when you're in a battle in combat, you don't know what's going to happen. You know, if an RPG is going to take out your helicopter, you're going to hit head on with another helicopter, or so. I mean, comparing it is a little bit hard. I mean, I've been in fights in boats and everything else, but it was almost fun compared to what I had been doing. I mean, I enjoyed it. I mean, even fighting a guy, you're just like, cause, I mean, it terrified some people, but once you're in it, and enjoy it. And that's what I told my new guy was with me. I was in this fight with a guy on a boat, and he's just like, "What are you laughing about?" And I'm just like, I'm like, well, I mean, it's so hilarious, the way the guy was kind of drunk and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm just kind of laughing about it, and he's just like, I can't believe you thought that was funny. And I said, I didn't think it was funny. I just thought it was, compared to, everybody's all scared, and his wife's scratching me, and I'm having to push her away with her boat away from my boat so she's not scratching me, and then dragging him in our boat and fighting this guy. And it was just funny to me for some reason. And so my trainee was with me, and he's just like, I didn't think that was funny at all.
Did you guys ever have to go out with like the North Carolina National Guard and search for marijuana grows or anything like that?
No, we didn't. That's not our deal. I mean, if we found it, we'd report it. I never found any. But yeah, that was out of our jurisdiction. So, like I said, if guys found it, they'll report it. But
all right,
we didn't do any of that.
Hey, before we get on to the next part, let me kind of close off by asking you a couple things. What did you learn out of either the academy or the work you did with the wildlife folks that complemented that was you wish you would have had maybe some of that training back in with your STT or other stuff? Was there anything different that they did that would have complemented your skills that you had prior to that?
Yeah, I think the interview skills, interacting with people, basically you're trying to build a case on someone, and I could have used that, as a, hey, and what we were doing, hey, once you captured somebody, or once you've, the way they trained us to interview people, to know if they were lying, to know, and the driving skills we learned, because that was really a great school we went to learn, basically to drive, from the highway patrol. I mean, we went to a driving school in the Navy, but it was more of how to bust through barricades and wreck people and this, that, and the other thing. But this was a racetrack down in Garner, North Carolina, that you drive on, and I mean, you are like racing on this track,
fun,
trying
isn't
to
it?
catch somebody. You've been on it, obviously.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, when I was going through the patrol academy, we were at Schilling Air Force Base before they moved out to Marymount College there in Kansas. But Fort Riley was pretty close, so we would get exposure to the massed helicopters and medical support people and their EOD guys. They would come in Hueys, and some of us would get a chance to go up in those, and have fun. But those guys said, "Hey." Because we had our emergency vehicle operations course, what we called the skid pan out there. So we took these helicopter pilots, some of them that were Vietnam guys. I mean, they'd been in combat and stuff, and we put them in our cars. And when you're on a half scale course, so when you're going 55, it simulates 110. When we're going through some of those curves, and you can see, you really get an appreciation for the limits of what a vehicle can do, and then how it can handle. I thought the guys would shit their pants being up in the helicopter. They do some turns. They obviously were not hanging out on an 8-foot, rope like you were, but
Not many people do that.
yeah, but these guys would come back and they're like, son of a bitch. They'd have white knuckles and stuff. And our driving instructors were really good. The point of where emergency vehicle, how being evasive, what you can do. So it was one of the thing I love about it. It's the appreciation for both worlds. It's like, yeah, you do some neat stuff, but then you realize, hey, we do some neat stuff too, on the other side. And it's like, and it's getting those combination of skills together.
Yeah, that's what I say. I might be getting close to retirement, but if it hadn't been for 9/11, I would still be a wildlife officer. So,
Well, nice segue. So
Yeah.
let's talk
We didn't
about
even
that.
set that up. That's just, you did good.
Well, look, it's my interview skills. Speaking of that, that's one of the things I used to instruct was interview and interrogation, taught out at NSA, guys like that. So
you just pulled it out of me.
I just pulled it out of you. I just wait till you see what else I pull out here.
Don't feed his ego, Kevin.
Hey, but well, yeah, I led you down the path. No, but let's talk about that, because that is something that has an impact of a lot of people. A lot of people prior military joined back because of that. A lot of people who never were joined because of that. I mean, obviously, people have seen the movie American Sniper, the story of Chris Kyle and stuff, guys that were affected by this. You were affected in a different way. You'd done your time in the military. You were now serving the citizens in North Carolina. But what about 9/11 made you decide you wanted to get back in the game again?
So I was actually teaching survival on the side to actually the SEALs that I had used to work with, because when they would come up with a school for us to go to for us, like tracking or survival or whatever, they'd always send me, because I like doing that kind of stuff, and a lot of them didn't, So I mean, it was just like, hey, why don't you go and you can come back and you can show us, what you learned in the abbreviated version, rather than having to live in a debris hut and trap and do all this stuff and whatever. So, so I kind of I was still in contact, with the guys, quite a bit, and so I was in the process. At that time, I had brought all the journalists or the editors to a lot of the major newspapers in North Carolina. I had brought them to my place here in North Carolina, and I'd set up a survival course to put those people through, just to let them know, okay, this is kind of what I got going on. I'm gonna train you how to, build fire, get water, shelter, how to survive, out in the woods. And so this is happening, right when 9/11 happens. Okay. So I got all these people here, all these journalists and whatever, So the last place I want to be is out in the woods teaching people how to survive when I know what's going on in the world. And so right when the first plane hit, my wife and I are driving, and she goes, oh, in NPR, it said a plane hit one of the World Trade Centers. And I was kind of listening to her, and she said, and then he says, what's a gaping hole? It's a massive hole. There's smoke and fire coming out of this thing. And I was like, well, that's a terrorist attack. I said, before the second plane hit, I said, because it's an airliner, it's not like a Cessna. It's not like anything, I mean, as soon as it described it, I said, well, that's a terrorist attack. A terrorist just flew that into the World Trade Center. And my wife's like, no. I'm like, and then the second plane hit, and I'm like, yeah, I told you. And she goes, you're not going back in. And I was already like, I didn't say it, but I was like, oh, yes, I am, and so that, I mean, really, so we were stopping at gas stations, we were en route to Indiana. Her dad had an aneurysm, and I was going to drop her off and come back and finish teaching this course for these journalists and stuff. So every gas station you stop in, man, it's got it all over the television, the building's on fire and then collapsing, and you're just like, man, I was just, it pissed me off.
Adrenaline's pumping.
Yeah. So I get back home and I'm immediately on the phone with my guys, because there's no cell phone. I didn't have a cell phone or whatever. I get back home on landline with Dev Group, my guy there. And I'm like, hey, I said, I need to look at coming back, and he's one of the guys that was in Black Hawk Down, Battle of the Black Sea. And he's like, okay. He goes, I'll talk to the Master Chief and we'll see what we can do. And I mean, this is like 2 days after 9/11. And then so in the evenings, I come to the house and the people are staying in their debris huts, and they're I've taught them whatever I'm teaching them. And then I'll come home, I'm on the phone, So whatever, 2 or 3 days later, he calls me back, and I call, and he's like, hey, he goes, Master Chief says you can come back, but you're going to need to go back to the regular SEAL teams for a couple of deployments, and then you can come back here. And, I was just like, I mean, that's a by the book textbook answer, of, Master Chief, what they should say, I guess, and I was like, oh, okay. But I was good with it. I was like, I didn't care. I was just like, I want to get back to, but he goes, hey, I'd just go to selection, if I was you, and I'm like,
what does that mean?
So selection, I didn't know at the time. Selection is the process for going to the Army Special Mission Unit that's stationed out of Fort Bragg, and that's the unit that he was attached to over there in Black Hawk Down. And so that's what he told me, and I said, well, okay, well, what do you got to do to go there? And he goes, the reason I'm telling you this, he says, they're already over there, and he goes, we're not doing anything right now. And I was just like, well, that sounds like a place for me. So he says, well, you got to do like a compass course, some kind of little compass course or something. And I was like,
oh, here we go again. Just right down the road in some little compass course. Yeah.
That's a setup right there.
So I was just like, wow, okay. To get there, you just got to do a compass course. And he's like, wow, that's what they told me, because when he came back from that Battle of the Black Sea, he was like, I'm going to go try it for those guys, and this is back in 93, and we're like, what? And he's like, I'm telling you, he goes, those dudes are badasses. He goes, and killers. He says, I'm going to go try out for them. And we're like, hey, man, we're SEALs, and what are you talking about, And he goes, I'm telling you, he goes, I'm going to go, and we're just like, all right, and so he brings it up to command. I guess the command says, well, that's fine, but if you don't make it, you're not coming back here. So, yeah. So,
in other words, if you don't make this new assignment, then the SEALs don't want you, even though you've been trained and you've done everything?
Well, you've basically turned, and so,
yeah.
But I've been out.
Gotcha.
I've been out now for 5-6 years. So he goes, man, it's a perfect opportunity. He goes, you're not in anymore. I mean, they didn't let you come back here. So they want you to go to the regular teams. So might as well. He goes, if you don't make it, then you can come on back, And I was like, all right, well, you got a phone number or whatever, And so gave me the guy's phone number, and I called him up. And a friend of mine that was actually sitting in the office when I first called, he was sitting near the recruiter. And his name's Kyle Lamb. I know you guys probably know him. And the guy goes, hold on a minute. So he puts me on hold, and he goes, hey, do you know a guy named Kevin Holland? ex-dev group guy. He wants to come try out, and they're like, what? Why don't you just go back there, And the guy's like, well, he's out now. He's out, and he goes, was he in the reserves or what? And he goes, I don't know. So he puts me back on, gets me back on the phone. He's like, hey, what military unit are you in? And I'm like, well, I'm not in the military. So he's like, well, he goes, man, you got to be in the military to, go to selection or whatever, and I'm just like, okay, all right. Any military? And he says, yep, any military. So I said, okay. So he's like, all right, talk to you later. So I hung up. So I went and joined the National Guard the next day. The U.S., my local engineer battalion here in Wilkesboro, North Carolina, went and signed up for a year. So I call that guy back. I'm like, hey, I'm in the military. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah. I said, I'm in the National Guard, and he's like, okay. He goes, why don't you come down here and do a PT test? So I drove, my truck broke down. I mean, as a game warden, that's a great job, but back then they tried to starve you to death. You ate a lot of beans and cornbread, and whatever deer you could kill. So, I mean, they didn't pay you real good. So I had a pretty crappy Ford Ranger pickup, and it broke down en route. One of my game warden buddies actually came pick me up, carried me on into Fort Bragg to actually do this PT test for the recruiter. And so I'd stayed in shape, so I done pretty good. And the guy's like, all right, well, he'll fill out this application, and we need a resume. And I didn't have a resume. So I had to buy a typewriter. It was a new typewriter, but it was still a manual typewriter because it didn't have a computer. And typed up a resume, filled out their application, and then mailed it, snail mail, back down there. And so I don't know, I waited probably 2 or 3 weeks, and I was just, kind of like, and then they called me and they're like, hey, so here's the deal. We're going to cut you orders to selection in March, and blah, blah, blah. And so the rest is kind of history. I ended up going to selection. I made it.
Well, hold on. Anytime somebody says blah blah blah, you're covering up a lot of good stuff. So let's rewind blah. Let's unpack blah 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 just a little bit. So you get these orders when? I mean,
I get these orders probably November. So like I said, I kind of went through this whole process of going down there, filling out everything, and they get back to me probably end of October, I'm guessing. And then they're like, hey, we're going to send orders to your unit here in Wilkesboro, and then you'll need to get some extra BDUs, because all they had was cotton BDUs, from the early 80s, this National Guard unit, because I didn't have any of that stuff. I didn't have anything. So all I had was the engineer battalion patch, some cotton BDUs, and my game warden boots that I wore as a game warden, which, because they're broke in. And so anyway, so that's how that kind of started out. I had to take all my leave as a game warden to go to selection. So I was still a game warden up to the day I left. And even while I was up there, I was still a game warden. And basically was burning all my leave to go to selection. And so, yeah.
Well, talk about selection. How long of a process is that?
So that's just that first initial selection's a month long. Yep. As in March.
Did you go do that navigation course?
That little compass course kind of thing, it was, yeah.
A little more than that.
We've heard a lot about navigation. And actually, as we get through this too, I want you to also talk about the difference between the way that the mindset and the theory behind the way SEALs, Dev Group works versus Delta. A lot of people, they're all obviously highly trained, but there's different focuses or different things that they're looking at. But what constituted selection? What was that month like?
So, well, there's a lot to it. It's a whole lot of individual effort. I put it this way, and it has a lot to do with land nav. I'll say that, but the difference. I'll go into the difference. I think because as a SEAL, you're always on a team. You're never not with other guys. You might have a shooting test or something on your own or whatever, but you're never not with a group of guys, up there, you can't even hardly speak to anybody, so you show up, we showed up with 126 of us, and I didn't have any like markings of what I was just a National Guard dude, some hillbilly from, a National Guard unit in North Carolina. And so, and it wasn't like you sitting around talking to each other because they didn't want you talking to each other, and so you weren't really friends with people at selection. It's an individual effort. So I think the difference is they'll take a person that can do it on his own and then put him on a team, whereas you're always on a team, and a guy could possibly slip through maybe because of the team's strength. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, because I love the SEALs. I mean, I love being a SEAL, but that's the difference. I think is, hey, they take a guy that can survive. 16 of us were left out of 126, and they take those guys now, and now they put them on a team, and so each one of those guys can operate
independently. Yeah.
Independently.
Because we kind of joke about this. Are you allowed to say where your selection was held at?
It's just Appalachia. It's up in the mountains, Yep.
Almost heaven.
Yeah.
It could be. And while you were up there, what was maybe was land nav one of the biggest reasons people didn't make it out of selection?
Well, I mean, there's several. There's quite a few things, I mean, the officers is a little bit different, what they have to do. I mean, we do everything the same up to a certain point, and then they break off for a little extra. And then there's a board you go through, and it's basically a whole lot of integrity too, because, they'll check your pack. You got to have, you don't be light and don't be late, and so you got to have everything you left with, and you can't be light when they weigh your rucksack and all that. So
what does that mean?
Well, you got to have a certain amount of weight in your ruck. So let's say, you've basically packed your rucksack to weigh 50 pounds. Okay. And you didn't take into account that you're going to drink water during this event, and you get to the end of it and they weigh your rucksack and it's 48 pounds. It's an integrity issue because you didn't think ahead to go, hey, I got to have an extra 2 or 3 pounds to take up for that water. And it sounds trivial, but once you get into these type units and stuff, nothing's trivial.
That's a huge asset, is having that forward thinking ability. And that's a basic way of getting it started.
Yeah. I mean, and this is the basic level of, what I'm saying, of the first leg of this whole training that's getting ready to start, So you got 6 or 8 more months, more like 8 months. Once you finish up there and there's the 16 of you left, now you've got the real training.
So when you were talking about this, if you were going to leave with your ruck, you'd need to make sure that it weighed 53 or 54 pounds, and you drink it down. So by the time you got back, it was 50
or more. As long as it weighed more, you're good. As much,
but you couldn't go under, because if you went under the minimum, in a sense, you were cheating because you were reducing weight and not doing it to the standard everybody else was.
Exactly, and so everybody else is having to put out more than you are. So I mean, that's just a tiny example I'm bringing up, because there's other things, the way you interact with people during this training, and because you do peer on each other. And I'd never done that before. Like, hey, who do you like? Who do you not like? Who would you want to go to war with? And I mean, you're like, I don't know.
Hell, I don't know. You don't allow me to talk to anybody. I don't get
you got to figure it out, because I mean, it's one of those things, it's just, by their actions and their abilities. And I mean, that's kind of what you're going off of, and so I can't really get into a whole lot of it, but it's, it was I mean, obviously, if you lose that many people in that short of a time, it was a pretty tough deal. So, well, you walk a lot. I bet we walked 400 miles. So,
did you have to run everywhere?
Yep. I mean, when you were in it, not like if you're walking to the chow hall or something, you didn't. But when you're out in it, you didn't know. You don't know what the times are. You don't know when you have to be there. You don't know anything. You just know, hey, this is where I got to be at a certain time, and you don't want to be late. You don't want to be light. So that's it, So not knowing, you give it everything you got, because once again, I had no plan B. I was going to be in the National Guard, and my wildlife was over pretty much, because
Well,
I
hey,
burned
you
all
got
my
those
leave.
photography skills. You could have used those in the
I
National
could have
Guard.
took some pictures. Yeah. Yeah.
This is much more trivial than what you were going through there. But when I was going through the DEA Academy, the guy sitting next to me in the classroom, we're on these tiered levels, and you got a big desk in front of you. Everybody's on the same big round, circular or semicircular table. And he would set pictures of his wife and children out, like in a square in front of him. And during the whole class, he'd just sit there and look at his family. And you knew, dude, you have no business being here. And he'd take a test. He'd ace all the tests. He's very intelligent, but just didn't have the right mindset.
Yeah.
And he made it about halfway through the academy, and he came in one Saturday, and we're, I think back then we were still restricted to the academy on weekends. And he's like, guys, listen, I'm going to pull the pin. So just want to tell you goodbye. And we're like, okay, good luck to you. And he's a quitter, and you just don't have a lot of patience for them. And he says, well, could you help me carry my stuff down to the car? It's like, are you freaking kidding me? Get your quitting ass out of here. Good luck to you in life. We don't see any more of you. It's just, and that's what you're using as your observation skills with the other people to see, do they have that mindset to be doing what they're going to get ready to do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's it. It's like, hey, this guy, I get back to the barracks, he's there when I get there, or he's right after me, or, you know what I'm saying? And so you're just like, you're judging people. It's like another Spartan environment, it's like, hey, is this the guy I want with me? He seems squared away, his gears, he's never like, they're never yelling, they don't yell at you. Nobody even speaks to you hardly, except they'll give you classes and whatever, and now it's on you. 100% it's on you. So that's the beauty of that selection is you can't blame anybody. You can't blame the instructors, even people that don't make it. I guarantee you that they'll go, that's the most professional run course I've ever seen in my life. That's why I left there. I was like, I couldn't even believe it.
You got to be able to think on your feet. I never knew that about Delta. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Delta,
Army Special Mission Unit. So yeah.
Army Special Mission Unit, referred to in the media as Delta, in the movies as Delta. General Jerry Boykin, a friend of Murph's, lives in Ashburn here, member of Delta. According to the media, we can neither confirm nor deny that, right, Kevin?
Yep. I was in the Army Special Mission Unit. I don't
know what Delta is. It just comes after Charlie Delta, something like that. So, hey, but from a contrasting.
Let me ask you, do you recognize this?
I have seen that before. It seemed like in a movie or something.
Something in a movie. Yeah. Yeah. I saw it on a coffee cup once too, Murph.
Kind of looks like a college Greek letter, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
with a sword through it.
Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta. So why did they call it Delta? Because they wanted to worry where Alpha, Beta, and Gamma were. So like SEAL Team 6. Where's Delta Force? I don't know. Find Alpha Force first. So actually, Alpha is one of the premier Russian units too. So you've got Vimpel and Alpha and part of the Spetsnaz. So we'll ask you about that later. But in terms of contrasting and comparing, they're different. I get that they're different. Were they different? What is it? But from the physical standpoint, were they about the same? Did they expect the same from you physically between SEAL and Buds as they did in the Army Special Mission Unit?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, so we would do a thing called an upper body round robin, and it was basically as many pull-ups as you can do, as many dips, as many bench press as your body weight plus 10%. I mean, it was just it was a brutal thing, and then a 5-mile run. So it all revolves around being fit enough to do that job, because you never know when you're going to end up being in the middle of nowhere and you got a E&E, or you got to carry your buddy or whatever it is. So physically, they're pretty. The only difference is the water deal for the SEALs. I mean, that's their egg to suck, and so the Army doesn't really want to deal with that. I mean, they will if they have to, but
What was the Special Mission Unit, this training you went through? What was their version of the water? Was there something that they did that was unique to them?
Well, really, I mean, what we did there is you do boat jumps sometimes, free fall and kick a boat out, and jump out after it. But I mean, it wasn't a big focus because really the whole time I was there was at war, so, and there wasn't near the ocean. So, the riverine thing was, and we would use the Navy, the riverine, the brown water Navy to insert on targets, quite a bit actually. So we got all the respect in the world for those guys because, man, they would put us in and come get us, and I mean under pretty bad situations. And so, but that was kind of the extent of what we did as far as in combat with the water stuff.
Well, funny you should mention that too, because everybody's kind of got their thing, right? So you talk about the brown water Navy, then, but on the other side, then when you're talking about getting inserted by air, I mean the 160th, the SOAR, the Special Operations Air, they kind of made a name for themselves as being the people who did a lot of the air insertions. You've got the brown water Navy, and you got the 160th, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, the 160th was came into being after Desert One, basically when all the military had all their different, like Air Force, Army, they had all their different assets. So they decided, hey, we need a designated airframe to carry these guys around, these special operations guys, and that's where 160th came from. So they basically service, a dev group, Army Special Mission Unit, Rangers, and sometimes SEALs, vanilla Whiteside SEALs, and I mean, so it's and they're super highly talented. They got a selection process. It's over the top too, getting guys in there that are the right guys to be able to basically. I mean, I've been on birds with them where people are shooting like for trying to kill us, and then they just sit there and just hold that stick, and they ain't armed or nothing, and we're in a gun battle with these people, and those guys just sit right there. I mean, just cool as a cucumber.
I mean, just the admiration and the respect you have for people who go through that and can remain calm doing their job, right? Because it's one of those things. It's like, look, if it's my day, it's my day. I can't control that, but what I can control is focus on my mission, what I'm doing right now.
Yep. Yep. I mean, they're the best of the best. They would put us on roofs that you can't even, I mean, covered in barbed wire. They'd have barbed wire rigging around these roofs, and you got to rope into that barbed wire, and usually you get hung upside down. But these guys they'd put you on that roof with all this stuff. You have to cut your way out of this barbed wire and then get into the building. But those guys are amazing.
All right.
Jeez.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of those things too, because this gets into the meat of what we want to talk about too. So, you may not have seen a lot of action as a SEAL, but you saw a hell of a lot of action when you were in the Army side.
Yeah, pretty much every deployment was a combat deployment when I was in the Army.
What was your first combat deployment once you got out of the training, the Special Mission Unit, and you started deploying? Because, but the other thing too, with the special, there's a lot of people. There's special operations, there's special forces, there's Green Beret and stuff. So, kind of let people know the inside baseball about what those different things mean. Because not everybody's a Green Beret who's special forces, but not every. You got Rangers, you got all this other stuff. So, kind of give us the nomenclature from the Army side.
Okay, so Special Forces is really talking about Green Berets, and their mission is a FID, where they go in, they'll train a partner force to fight indigenous people, and then they'll either go with those people to fight, or they'll train them up and send them out. And that's their main mission. Rangers are basically they're probably the best, I guess, small infantry unit in the world. I mean, they're super good guys. They uh, they support both Dev Group and the Army Special Mission Unit as far as like blocking positions and this, that, and everything. And also, too, they'll be used if there's an extra target or something that the compound's so big, they'll actually send the Rangers into a different part of that compound to deal with whatever they got to deal with. So they're very talented guys. They're just really young guys, and but the training they go through to get to where they're at is it's pretty brutal as well. So
Is it also accurate to say a lot of times they use the Rangers as a quick reaction force too? I mean, that'll be part of what they do as well.
yep. So they'll be standing by, basically with the CSAR to go with the Air Force PJs and stuff that actually will come if we have a downed aircraft or whatever to pull guys out. and so the Rangers will be security for those guys as they go in. And I mean, and the Rangers have their own mission too. It's not just supporting us, but they have their own mission as well.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's just amazing when you start looking at it, because a lot of people confuse special forces and they think, oh, Ranger or SEAL. But like you said, when you say special forces, you're talking Green Beret.
Yeah, that's Green Berets. I actually, because I had never been to a school in the Army, so I get done with the training for the OTC is what it's called, operator training course, and then February we deploy to invade Iraq 2 months later. So basically everything after that is combat. So after 3 or 4 years of that, my team leader's like, "Hey, you have got to go to some sort of school in the Army because you're never going to get promoted." And I didn't care. I was like, whatever, let's just go, let's just keep deploying. So, but no, they're like, no, they really look out for your career at the unit. And so they're like, no, we're going to send you to the Q course. So I actually had to go to the Q course and complete that and all. And
Q
earn,
course? Tell us what that is.
So the Q course is the training to earn your Green Beret. So you basically go to the Q course, and it's out of North Carolina here, and you're basically it's small unit tactics. You're learning to deal with indigenous personnel. You're living off the land. I mean, it's a long deal. It's about 8 months long, and then I ended up testing out in Spanish, and I ended up I got my Green Beret. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a whole different animal than Army Special Mission Unit.
¿Tú hablas español?
Hablas español, sí?
Pequeño.
Okay. I thought you said you tested out in Spanish.
Well, that was 05, 15, 18 years ago, and it was just to get my Green Beret, or get my tab.
Get your tab.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick too, before we talk about a couple of your other missions, that's another thing too. A lot of people, we talked about this in the pre-call, but we don't want to dive into too much of that because we agreed what we wanted to talk about. But there are a lot of people who go through Ranger training, but that does not make them a Ranger. Earning the tab is different than going through Ranger training.
Absolutely. Yep. So, and this took a while for me too, because I'm not an Army guy, so. And then you'd be like, "Oh, he's been to Ranger school," and they're like, "Yeah, well, a lot of people's been to Ranger school," and you're like, "Well, that don't mean they're a Ranger," and they're like, "No," I said they got to be a battalion, so you got to be in one of the battalions, first, second, or third battalion, Ranger battalion, to actually earn your scroll, and that's the Ranger scroll, 75th Ranger Regiment. It's a big deal, and so you have to be in that regiment to one of those battalions to actually earn your scroll to be called, hey, I'm a Ranger. Ranger qualified is going to Ranger school. I'm Ranger school qualified. And I mean,
But there's nothing you wear on the uniform to indicate that, is there?
Yeah, there's a Ranger tab. There is a Ranger tab. And then there's, and if you're in battalion, you got a Ranger scroll. Yep. So, yep.
So the tab without the scroll means you've been through Ranger school, but the tab with the scroll means you are actually a Ranger because you're assigned to a battalion.
You came from Ranger battalion. Yep. And all Rangers have to go to Ranger school, and they have to succeed, or they have to leave Ranger battalion.
Look, again, Darwinism at its finest. It's survival of the fittest. You don't want, Steve Jobs actually talked about this one time. When he talked about his hiring philosophy, he says, you want A players because A players hire other A players because they want that competition. They want that level. You hire B players hire C players, and pretty soon you have the bozo explosion. Because, you want that. That's why you want, if you can't qualify to be the top 1% of the 1%, hey, you're still great. You're still better than 99% of everybody else, but you want to be at that level. You got to operate at that level.
And I really learned more about this from my son was at 1st Battalion. He was a Ranger at 1st Battalion. So I learned more about this from him than I did. Yeah. So
being in it.
Hey, well, we want to kind of talk about some of these missions you did because I don't know, you can't believe everything you read on the internet, but you ask a few people, but you did quite a few missions. How many missions in total? And we're going to talk about why your mission stopped a little bit later, but how many missions total did you do?
I've just kind of do it as a conservative number because I did 14 deployments as a, in the Army, and then I did deployments, as a SEAL, before that. And then after I retired, I did deployments with a government agency. And so I just say around 1,500, just because I know it's at least that. It could be more.
I like that with a government
Dang.
agency. Let me see. What government
Dang.
agency would be
Well,
interested in using skills and
could have
capability?
been USDA.
Nah,
I do have some trapping skills, and I can trap
Al,
some beavers.
you can sell that to somebody else. Okay.
Let's move along here.
Well, we'll talk about that. Yes. So, anyways, going back to where we were, I don't know if you can see this, but
I can.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure what agency you're
I
talking
think that's
about.
the USDA.
Yeah, that's the USDA. Yeah, the United States DevGru Association.
Oh,
But you got into some interesting things. The one we want to circle in on now involves somebody who is room temperature and should be, but we want to talk about the mission finding, locating, capturing Saddam Hussein.
okay.
How did that come about?
Okay, so and I really, I wouldn't really be able to talk about this, but I was asked a couple years ago to actually tell this story by the unit, and so the only reason I'm going to even mention kind of about it is because I was asked to talk about it. So
Now, before you start, because a lot of stuff was always covered by non-disclosures. Did you have to get any kind of an official waiver to talk about things that had previously been classified?
I did. And I'm actually, because I asked for the thing when I was asked to actually tell this story with another film group. I was supposed to be working with a writer, and I was asked to tell this story because they wanted the real story to be told. And so the first thing I was like, prank call, and they're like, no, we're serious. We want you to tell this story. And I'm like, well, I need something in writing, that says I'm not going to get P&G'd or, persona non grata for this deal, and
or arrested for disclosing classified information.
whatever. Cause I've never publicly, talked about, I gave a Veterans Day presentation last November, and I did say something about it, but this was way after I was given permission. So anyway, so the whole Saddam thing, we, after the invasion, we ended up invading Iraq, 18th of March, 03. And we did a desert mobility mission across Western Iraq all the way to Tikrit. It was, I think, supposedly the longest desert mobility mission since World War II. It was probably like 1,500 miles. And we were hitting targets all along that way, looking for weapons of mass destruction and basically confirming or denying whatever was in the reports that the intelligence was getting. So we ended up finishing that mission. It's about 38 days. And then we came back home, and then we got on a rotation. And then once that mission was complete, the mission was to kill or capture Saddam. That was our mission.
And let's stop there for a second, because we had this discussion beforehand, because there's a reason now that you've got the legal authority to go after Saddam Hussein, because executive order, this is inside baseball for that vote, but it was issued that part of the National Security Act in 1947 and part of executive order 12333, the United States is not allowed to engage in political assassination. But Saddam Hussein had been basically declared a military target, right?
Yeah. But he still had to be a threat. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Yep. So we were tasked with killing or capturing Saddam Hussein. That was our number one goal. And we were, once a squadron took our place, then another squadron took their place. Then we were blown out to go back over to help them because they thought they'd found him. And they supposedly, intel had it that he had hundreds of bodyguards and they needed some help. So we went back over probably September of 03 and then stayed for a couple of weeks, came back, and we redeployed in October for our rotation, our normal rotation.
Well, let's set the context a little bit for this too, because he was doing a lot of things. At one time, he was like, part of his plan, right? He would stay in a different palace every night, or he'd go to different locations. He did.
None of that was true.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at too. Is they talk about, if you listen to the news, it's like, oh, he had food tasters. He would go someplace every night. He had all of this. He had all these different things. What's the reality?
He was in a small camp up along the Syrian border the whole time. And so we would take a picture from one of his palaces or whatever, where it had his whole family and had all his basically generals and whatever. And we take that on target, and we get intelligence of where some of those people were. So we went in on a target one night, ended up, this guy come running at me. I hit him instead of shooting him, and basically knocked him down. We captured him, and ended up being, he was the guy that was in one of those pictures. And our intel guy asked him, hey, what he didn't want to know where Saddam was at. He did, but the guy wasn't going to tell him. He goes, hey, who in this picture can tell us where he's at? He picked out a guy in that picture that said, if you capture this man, you will find Saddam. And so our whole mission was to capture that guy, the whole rotation.
And how long was a rotation?
3 months. And so that was October. We captured Saddam in December. So,
right.
Yeah.
So that's okay. We fast forwarded to the end. Let's roll back. So October, yeah, and then we left.
Pretty much.
Well, but going back to that, what was it like on a daily basis? In other words, you were probably, there had to be agency assets over there. You had NSA. I mean, you guys were getting a full complement of intel from probably a variety of places. But what was the most valuable thing to you on your daily operations?
I'll tell you, it was honestly unit driven. We were given a lot of intelligence from other agencies that was absolutely bogus. And even we followed a guy with a beacon in his shoe for a month, going and hitting targets and hitting targets and hitting targets and following this guy and this, that, and the other thing. And he was a paid asset. And he was absolutely stringing the whole task force along that whole time. And so in the background, our unit intel guys were building this whole case of who to hit, what targets to hit. And so we would go hit targets at night, 3 targets a night in Ramadi, Fallujah, all over the country. And then we capture a guy, and then he'd capture him, and capture another guy and this guy. And it was leading to the guy that we were looking for to take us to Saddam. And so,
yeah, hang on there for a second. I want to ask if you were able to use because you said one of the skills you wish you had got, what you got in the wildlife, was the interview skills, being able to talk to people. Did that help you? I mean, were you involved in interviewing, or did that help you with some of the work you were doing now?
So there was a team, like say in our troop, that they were they would question the people, and that wasn't my team. So I was on the assault team, and then I ended up moving to the climbing team, but I was never on the team that actually questioned the prisoners.
You said the assault team and the climbing team. What's the difference between the two?
Well, the climbing team, if there's something you can get on the roof, or you can get behind them or whatever, that's the team that does that. And then you've got a couple teams that they assault.
Direct action.
Direct action. Yeah. I mean, the other team's a direct action team too. But they just come in from the top.
They come in from the top. Okay.
Yeah.
So walk through this now. So when do you finally start getting the idea that, hey, we think we know, we think we got our confidence is higher now than it was before? Because look, Murph, you know this too. I mean, you'd love to believe that informants come forward and they've got credible information, but most of the time, it's shit, right? I mean, you probably had to wade through a bunch of people down in Colombia, or even over here in the States, wading through a bunch of crap to find that one nugget that was actually true.
It was. And through experience and through multiple operations that are non-productive, you learn how to read people like that. And you can tell. My partner, Javier Pena, is one of the best I've ever seen when it was come to discerning, is the information legitimate or is it BS and somebody just trying to earn money? So it kind of comes with experience.
Well, and the way that basically Uday and Kusay were killed was a guy walks up to our gate and was like, hey, this is not my squadron. I wasn't there. And, but it was the unit. And he walks up and he says, hey, can you come get these guys out of my house? I mean, they took my house over. They beat my wife. I just need them out of my house. And they're like, well, all right, who are they? And they, what's Uday and Kusei? And they're like,
Say
really?
what?
Say what? And so one of the guys who had this guy basically had been talking to this guy. He's like, okay, well, so they take a undercover kind of vehicle and go check it out, and it is like barricaded up looking, So they're like, all right, well, let's take a squadron and roll up there. Well, they take fire en route to getting into the house, So it ended up being them. So I mean, it can be something as simple as that, as far as like an informant or whatever. And usually those are the ones that, hey, just all out of the blue, I mean, this guy that you've been paying for years and years and all this, that, and nothing's ever come to fruition. We learned that those aren't the guys.
No. If they're not producing, you give them a shot. If they don't produce, you don't go back.
Well, the reason the guy strung you around for a month is that was his income. That's how he was making money.
Yeah.
The shoe beacon guy is what we called him.
The shoe beacon guy.
Yep.
But that's interesting though too. The fact that a lot of the stuff that you can do. So you start. So when does Uday and Kusei happen in relation to when Saddam is captured?
So that happened during the summer. That was on probably June, July of 2003. I mean, I'm not sure of that date, but I mean, I know it happened that summer before the Saddam was captured.
And you were not, and that's the other thing too, is that was not your rotation at that time because you didn't come back until October.
Well, we came back in September to help that same squadron that killed those guys, but it was to go capture Saddam, but they were already dead by the time we went over. And then we came back over in October.
Okay. All right. So now you're back in October. So now you're walking through, you're starting to do your own thing. You're collecting your own intelligence. And so that kind of get to the point. At what point from October on, when is it that you finally start feeling like you've got a handle, like you're really starting to close in on Saddam, that you've got a good feeling that you don't know exactly where he is, but we feel really confident he's got to be like here, here, or here?
So we captured a guy in Samara that, we had no idea. I mean, he was just a target to us, and ended up being, because you'd always take the safe off target because there's intel in that thing. We popped this safe, and there's a couple $1 million in this thing in US dollars. And we're like, well, that's not normal. And okay, let's delve into who this guy is. He ended up being the son of the guy that the guy told us to find. Okay. So now we've got his son. So he's in the network as well. He's probably in his 20s, and so now we're like, oh, geez, we're close, So we get some intel off that target that leads us to another target in Baghdad, and we end up capturing that guy on that target in Baghdad. And a kind of a funny story with that guy was, I breached the door this side of the house, and then my buddy breached the door on this side. We go in, he goes into this side. They're clearing that side of the house. He looks under the bed, and old boy's in there with a toy gun under the bed with a gun.
Damn.
Oh,
You
yeah.
mean a real gun or a toy gun?
It's a toy gun, and it has an orange thing on the end of it.
Jeez.
Oh, yeah. And so my buddy's like, whoa, he almost shoots him, and he's like, is that a toy? And he drags this guy out. Well, that just happens to be the guy. If he'd have shot him, that'd have been it. Who knows how long it would have took, to have got him, but that was the guy. So then they carry him back to the detention center. We all go to bed. And so they're interrogating people or whatever. And they're like, hey, well, we need to know where this guy's at, and the guy's like, he's in the cell next door. And they're like, what? They go, yeah, he's right next door. And it was like oil and water. Nobody in that cell would be near that guy. I mean, he was just like by himself in there, and they like, that's him right there. The guy wouldn't even point him out. The guy was so mean and evil that the guy that actually knew who he was wouldn't even point him out. And he's like, no. He goes, I'll tell you which one he is, by around the corner. And they went and got him out of there. So, and ended up, hey, we got your son, and if you help us out here, we'll help you out with him. And that's how it happened.
So but that took you quite a while to get from that point, right? I mean, so how long from the time you guys started taking your own initiative till you got to that point with that guy in the cell? How long of a time was that?
Once we kind of I guess threw the BS flag on the shoe beacon guy. Probably we wasted time with that guy for probably a month, and then so you figure November time frame, we really started doing our own thing and not worrying about the assets we were being given, and about a month, I think. And then now you start seeing some stuff. You start seeing some stuff connecting the dots. And our intel guy was just a great guy, a guy from Georgia, super smart. And he was on it. And he basically he's the reason that we got this guy. People go, man, you was on this. I'm like, yeah, but I was just one of the guys there. This ain't about me.
As all humble people say, but you were there though. So, but speaking of that, so let's get into like the last 24 to 48 hours before Saddam's captured. What kind of operational tempo is going on at this time? Are you guys just constantly hitting things, doing things, or what's the lead up to this?
We're all over the country. We're 2 to 3 targets a night is what we're doing, and we're basically bringing them in. We work all night, sleep all day, back out all night, sleep all day, and then we ended up. With the scenario I just told you, we captured, caught the guy's son. 2 days later, capture him, and then they woke us up during the day after the night we captured him and said, "Hey, we're going to Tikrit." So we basically woke up like, "What? We don't ever get up during the day," and basically loaded all our stuff into our armored vehicles. We drove around in, and the 6-wheel Panders is what they're called, and loaded up and drove to Tikrit daytime, which is normally what we don't do.
Yeah, that's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, there's IEDs everywhere and whatever. So ended up getting to Tikrit, and then sit down with the other troop that was in Tikrit, which was actually our real troop. We were attached to the troop in Baghdad just because they were short a team.
All right. Well, there's more to it than that. So you arrive in Tikrit. So what happens from that point on?
So then it's just a planning session of, okay, showing this guy a map, okay, where, and he basically says, hey, it's here. And so we set up, okay, now we've got, ISR footage of the place. Hey, this is how we want to do this target. There's 2 targets. There's basically en route, there's a target. And then the one that he actually ended up being on was further down the road, and they're about a mile apart. So,
and when you're talking about it's here, whatever, what are you talking about? Is it a building, a home, a business?
Yep. So it was a building, the first target, Wolverine 2, I guess, and then Wolverine 1 was actually just a campsite looking small building with an overhang, basically is all it was. Just an open, I guess, mud hut, basically is what it was, with a couple cots in there, And so that was the main target. And since we were in like our original group's AO, they actually got that target, and then the group had been with in Baghdad got this second target. So the most likely one we ended up going on.
So let's talk about that. Now, did you guys take any fire during this operation getting up to that point?
So it was pretty cold that night. We went down. We stopped up the road just to let the 4th ID get their cordon set up around us so that nobody could escape that area. And while we're standing there, we're kind of like, hey, because everybody was kind of feeling, hey, I think he might be there, and we had old boy with us. He was in the truck with a hood on, we go, hey, what if he's there, And the correct answer was, well, if he's a threat, you know what to do, So we're like, okay, so whatever that means. And so anyway, so we roll on down, and they drop off at that target. We move on to our target. We clear the target building. There were 2 guys there that were basically security for the place.
And when you rolled up, how many people have you got with you at that point?
It's about 25 guys. Okay. It's so basically 25, and that's including support people, probably 20 shooters, and then 5 or 6 support people, and then the sergeant major actually went with us of our outfit, and so. And then the other group broke off, and it was probably 20, 25 of them as well. So we roll up into this place. These guys are out front, and then basically they didn't have weapons with them. We just roll them up, capture them, zip tie them, and clear the rest of the compound all around the back and everything. And then it's just like, okay, bring out the guy.
Yeah, let's stop right there for a second, because obviously something's there, because why would you have 2 guys providing security for a mud hut, right?
Why are 2 guys there? Just 2 guys. Yeah, I mean, you read that, it's like, okay, they're never just – there's women, there's children, there's you never see that. So, we had a good idea because the guy said he was there, but, that in itself, with them being there without anybody else there, was suspicious. So automatically – you can't find him, bring out the guy, de-hood him. He walks over to an area like right near that lean-to mud hut thing and kind of kicks the leaves back and forth. And he says, well, he's right here. And so we're like, okay. And we were actually, my team was around the back of the house. And so they start digging. Another team starts digging this thing out. And they run into like a styrofoam plug. And so our troop sergeant major calls us. He goes, hey, we need you guys to get around here now. We might have something. So we came around, and we're watching this digging going on. So we're all standing here. And then they find this rope that's attached to this styrofoam plug. They pull this plug out, and the sand kind of pours down into the hole. And it's a no kidding, like 2x3 hole. And you can see bricks, lining this thing going down in there. And we're like, hey, throw a banger in that thing. So we grab a 9-banger and fire a 9-banger into this hole.
So tell us what that is. You got a 9-banger. What does that mean?
So a 9-banger is a flash bang that goes off 9 times, basically. So it's jumping around, and it sounds like a pistol going off, and it's flashing, and it's super distracting, and that's what it's for. And so fire this 9-banger in there, and normally, like the canine, we had a canine and a handler. He'll follow that thing, through a door or whatever, Well, that canine was not having any of it. He's just like, they're trying to shove him down in this hole, and he ain't wanting to go in. He's got his feet on either side of the hole, and he don't want to go in. So pull the canine back, and then all of a sudden you start hearing somebody talking out of the, it's like, wait. And the 9-banger stopped, and you hear somebody speaking in Arabic, And so we get the interpreter up there, and the interpreter yells something into the hole, and then they respond, whoever's in the hole, So now it's like, all right, man, everybody's got their gun on the hole, lights on, and he says something else. The interpreter yells at him, and he comes out, and all you can see is like hands like poking up over the edge of that hole. And then you see his head come out of the hole, and it's just this big bushy black head of hair. And then so we reach and grab him by the hair and the hands and drag him back over the top edge of this hole. And I remember the guy bigger than me, I almost picks him up and like looks him in the face, and he's like, holy shit, it's him. and then so he's yelling that he's the president of Iraq and he's ready to negotiate. And then there's a big Texan in our group, and he just cold cocks him, boosh, hits him in the mouth because, he's struggling and fighting. And so he basically puts him on the ground. Well, now everybody's like, okay, so we got to get him under control. So we're all on him now trying to get him under control because he's pretty strong for an old guy, and pull a weapon out of his, he had a Glock 18 on, fully automatic Glock, and get him pinned down to the ground. And basically, once that happens, it's kind of like, okay, whew, we got him, but now that hole's not been cleared, And so, I've got my gun in his chest, but I'm watching that hole because you don't know what's going to come out of this hole, and end up, hey, once he's secure, they've got him. I kind of stand up, and one of the other guys, he's trying to get in that hole, but he's a Irishman, and he's pretty thick Irishman, and he's got his kit on. He can't get in it. So by this time, I've took all my kit off, my magazines, my armor, everything, and all I've got is my pistol. And so I'm like, hey, I said, hop out. Let me get in there, So he hops out, and I jump in that hole. And so I get down in the bottom of that hole, and I'm like looking at you can kind of see because, the lights, everybody's shining down in there, and it's a T intersection at the end of this, like probably 8-foot run, So I'm sitting there watching, and I'm like, hey, so I kept a gun on it. And I'm like, hey, give me another pistol. And so a guy hands me down a Glock. I've got my 45 and I'm just kind of like, okay, it's kind of Boondock Saints. I kind of cross my pistols, and I go to that T intersection, and I just kind of clear the intersection. But luckily it was only about 6 feet, 3 feet either way, and then, so it was all clear, but we didn't know what was in there. So, and then at that point, they hand me down a camera. I just do all the footage that you saw on Fox News.
Well, there you go. There, your photography training finally pays off.
It paid off.
Yay!
I just hit play, and it worked. And so it all goes back to that training. And so anyway, so I did the video, handed it out. They sent that right away off to Fox News, I guess. And I just started handing his stuff out, and he had a bunch of cash in there and a couple
Real
AKs.
Quick question. There's been a couple stories out there. Was there somebody named Samir there?
Yeah, he was the Terp.
Did he, is he the one, did he punch Saddam?
I mean, maybe once he was laying on the ground and held down, maybe. But I know there was a female interpreter there screaming and kicking and trying to scratch him and everything else. And we had to restrain her.
Why?
Well, it's just because she was getting in the way, I mean, we were trying to get the guy, under control. And, and that involves
why did she want to attack Saddam?
Because she was a Shia.
Oh, gotcha.
I mean, that's the story we were told, and so, but she was not happy with him. And so, yeah, she was fit to be tied. And so we had to basically get her off of him, and because it was a lot of screaming. And I mean, it's a high energy moment. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm saying it like but it was electric. I mean, it was like, holy smokes.
Well, I mean, it's like you're talking about too. It's like, you got to be careful because you don't want to get too itchy of a trigger finger, shit's going down, but one round goes off, like you said, like the guy under the bed. Half a second more, you would have had a dead guy, and it would have taken you a lot longer to find out what was going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think it was better. We ended up capturing him. I could have shot the guy, but they actually ended up, I mean, his own people had their justice, and they hung him on my birthday like 3 years later. So
on your birthday?
On my birthday. Yep. December the 30th, 2006.
Happy birthday.
That's your birthday? I didn't know that. You're awful young, man.
No, I mean,
different year. I get
different year. Yeah. But that was, but the same day.
And they smuggled, and the other thing too, right? That was a little bit of controversy. Somebody smuggled footage of him being hung out. There wasn't supposed to be any cameras inside there, but somebody was able to, covertly bring a camera in and capture that.
It didn't look like a very professional job. I saw it, and I mean, couldn't happen to a meaner guy, though.
Well, look, for considering the things that he did, Kude Use did to the soccer team, how they killed people and stuff. Yeah, so you had a guy who couldn't understand how to tie a knot correctly, and he had to hang there an extra couple minutes. I got to tell you, I just don't feel any sympathy. It's not there.
I got a buddy that's was a DOJ attorney, and he was a JAG in the Army, and he was one of the people selected to go in and watch the execution. And that's a memorable event for somebody like Saddam Hussein. This is just a mass murderer, as bad as, if not worse than Pablo Escobar. And so his name's Mike. I said, Mike, so what'd you do afterwards? And he showed me pictures of things there, and he said, you know what? We all went out and we enjoyed cigars. We celebrated.
I was going to say he probably applauded and, walked out.
Proper way to take care of it. Hey, so the stuff that you brought out of the spider hole, what all, money, weapons, anything of other evidentiary value down in there that anybody was able to use?
Really, I mean, he had cigars. He had Monte Cristo or Cristalis cigars, Cuban cigars. He had some Romeo and Julietas. He had I think it was like $750,000 in cash in a little trunk, a little green trunk. I just handed it up, and I guess they handed that off to the the fourth ID guys. And what was funny is I remember our sergeant major looked at like the fourth ID colonel, and he goes, "Hey, you just captured Saddam Hussein." And the guy was like,
Yeah.
You know, I can see that. You've just captured Saddam Hussein. What are you going to do? We're all going to Disney.
"Yeah,
Right.
yeah."
So that was
So
December 13th. Now, how much longer were you in country before you rotated back?
we were there another probably 2 or 3 weeks. So we were still hitting targets, and we were going after the rest, more in the deck of cards.
Yeah.
That was one of the best things I think they ever did was that deck of cards. And by the way, it was real interesting too. One of our previous episodes, somebody Steve introduced us to, a guy named Jeff Sandy, was an IRS agent at the time. They brought him over. He ended up interviewing Tariq Aziz and ended up breaking down all the oil for food scam where the money was. That was part of what he did. And that was, another guy that was on the deck of cards, Tariq. So all good stuff. What was the mission going on when you took that round?
Oh, so we were, our job was Uzbekistan mercenaries were coming across the border, basically being paid by Al Qaeda to kill American soldiers. And so they would come across like platoon strength, heavy weapons, RPGs. I mean, just roll into the country, walk across the border, take the first house they come to, kill the adults, rape the kids, and end up killing the kids, and then move on to the next house. I mean, they're just disturbing people, really. I mean, and we didn't know this was going on. I mean, what we would do is wait till they went in the house, and then we would launch, and we'd end up going in and taking care of all those guys. And then, and one night we ended up destroying a guy's house while we were doing it, So, I mean, because there was a lot of them, and so we ended up, got in a big firefight and ended up killing them. And so we're like, "Hey, we're sorry, we burned your house down." And the guy's like, "Hey, no problem." He goes, "We knew nobody was watching, and I thank you for coming and trying to pay him money for burning his house down." He goes, "Thank you. No, I don't want your money." He goes, "You've done what you needed to do." And anyway, we forced him to take money because he was so happy that somebody was actually watching these atrocities that were going on. And then he told us what was going on at that point. He goes, "Well, what are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, this is what they do." And he told us, laid it out, and now, so we had a different perspective. So, I mean, as soon as them son of a guns would like come across the border and we saw them heading toward a house, we knew as soon as they went through that doorway and they set security, we launched and we would go. So they didn't have time to do all that evil stuff that they were planning. And so it was on one of those missions, and the main body of the force had went into a house. They'd put some guys in out in the, I guess I call it palm groves, out near the house as security. So our mission was to go and take care of the guys out in the palm grove. We were on Little Birds. And as we came in, we took fire. So my 2IC was on the left side of the bird, and he had a 6-shooter, a chunker, a 40 millimeter grenade launcher is what it was. So he ends up killing one of the guys with that, but the other guy took off, and he had a PKM machine gun. So we land, make sure this guy's not a threat anymore. And then as they're doing that, I go around the edge of the house and I look and I see that, and we're being notified from above that the guy is just out past the house. Okay. And so, I'm like, I go back and grab a guy. I'm like, "Hey," I said, "they're saying he's over here." And so we come around the house, and there's a big old hole of water right here. It's a spring fed, I guess. I don't know if they'd watered their crops or what it was, but I went around it and I thought, man, I'd hate to fall in that water because it was like 25 or 30 degrees. It was cold. And so my buddy's going up the wall, and I break that corner, and I'm focused on the open gate that's out here and where they're telling us the guy's at. And he was actually in a woodshed right here in this house. So basically he was like less than 10 yards from me, and he just steps out with that PKM. And so I catch movement because it's a super bright moon that night. And I catch it not with my night vision, but just I saw him, and I turn, and as I'm turning, he's shooting, and basically he shot my radio in half. And then, I don't know, a couple bullets bounced off my plates and my magazines. And then one of them went through right above my plate, just right here above my heart. And it exploded my clavicle and went out my no, I guess my clavicle, but my collarbone exploded the collarbone and went out my clavicle, and it basically rendered this arm useless. So I just, your weapon's heavy because it's got lasers and everything else on it. So now I'm like, I really can't get this weapon up and return fire because he's still shooting at me. So I just dove in this hole of water.
Now that's a 7.62 millimeter round, right?
It's a 7.62 by 54. So it's like a 30-06 round. It's
a big round.
Yeah. And so I dove in this water, and I'm kind of waiting for him to stop shooting at me, because I can hear the bullets hitting the dirt and the water above me. And I'm just kind of waiting on him to stop, and I'm thinking, well, I guess this is it, and I kind of said a prayer. I was like, well, God, just please take care of my family. And, but then I'm like, still alive, I'm waiting, and now he's not shooting at me anymore. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to get a breath of air. And I come up and I get a breath, and I'm just like, man, I can't move my shoulder, my arm. And I bow hunt quite a bit, and I'm just like, man, this is going to ruin my bow season. That's what I thought. I'm like, dang, because I can't move my
pain?
Huh?
What about the physical pain from being shot?
I just couldn't move my arm. I knew I was paralyzed, and I thought I was paralyzed. I thought, I don't know what he shot in here, but I just absolutely, it was dead, and I could hear bones crunching and so it was just like, man. So I was like, yeah, it's going to ruin my bow season. And if I can kind of get up on this bank, I'm going to try to shoot back at this guy, So I wiggle around and kind of get my gun up on like a little berm right here. But the problem is I've got my sling on still, and it's going under my arm, so I can't really raise my gun up that high. But I can look over and see muzzle blast, because he had took the machine gun once he'd shot me, stuck it around the corner, and him and my buddy kind of got in a little bit of a firefight with each other, but he has a PKM machine gun. So he basically mowed that whole corner down where my buddy was at. And he couldn't, there's nothing he could kind of do, he basically retreated to the back corner, and then he stuck it around that corner and was just mowing with this machine gun. And then a good reload. He reloaded in about 10 seconds, got that thing reloaded and put it around the corner again, around the next corner. So that's when I saw him shooting at that corner down here of this house. So I just kind of lay my gun up on the berm, and I just kind of start cacking rounds. My nods are gone. My night vision's gone. And I just kind of start shooting at that muzzle blast, just laid it up there, and I'm just slowly, and I don't know if he felt like he's taking fire, it's hitting the wall near him or something, but I see him kind of leap back, and he starts running right towards me, and I'm like, oh no, so I'm like, oh, so I'm kind of turning, trying to meet him, with some kind of fire, and as he comes by me, I'm just kind of shooting, and he tumbles like right next to me and drops his PKM right next to me. And then he kind of gets up and hobbles out and runs out the gate, and the Rangers captured him in the house next door.
So did you hit him in the foot?
That's what I was told. So, he dropped his gun for a reason right there next to me. I couldn't get my gun up any higher, though. All I could do was like this high, like pointing at the ground where he was running, so.
Well, plus you weren't capable to reload either.
I couldn't, yeah. I guess I could have, but it would
have been, you would have taken a long time to reload, injured like you were. Hey,
well, how deep was that hole of water you were in?
Probably 3 feet, 4 feet.
Oh, okay. So you could stand up.
Yeah, but it wasn't like it. I had a big puff jacket on, and I was dressed for winter, and so you're soaked, and you can't use this arm, and it was it was a kind of a crappy situation. But
what was the rifle you were using? Was that the?
It's H&K 416.
Wow. You know what? Just thank the good Lord it wasn't your day to die.
That's exactly what it was. It was just, it wasn't my time, and he probably blocked some of them bullets and won't let one of them get me,
those are massive rounds coming at you, and you obviously got your steel plates on in your vest.
Yeah.
Holy cow. This is just unbelievable. That's, you want to hear a miracle? You just heard one, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The other thing too, is just like you said, wasn't your day to die, brother. but this is going to be a long road back for you now at this point, because like you say, you've got, it's not that you're paralyzed as much as, right, it's broken everything that makes your arm move. That's all blown up.
Well, now it's a titanium bar. Basically, they just replaced my clavicle with a titanium bar, and so I had to switch. It did ruin my bow season, and so I had to switch to shooting left-handed.
Man,
So
what a shame.
I know. I shoot my bow left-handed now, so I'm actually getting ready to ship my bow to Missouri for a hunt that I'm gonna probably do next week. So, but anyway, I'm blessed to be able to shoot anything. So
You're blessed to be sitting right there talking to us.
I am.
Set off metal detectors, though, don't you?
Well, titanium don't. I don't know.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
don't? Okay.
no. I mean,
Did you have to get a medical card or anything if they scan you and see it in there?
Nope.
Oh, sweet, man.
It's a bunch of screws and a metal bar. So, I mean, I don't know. I've never had it set nothing off. So,
Well, but talk about your rehab, though. How long did it take you? Because, I mean, obviously they evac you out of there. They're going to take you, get some initial medical care for you. But how long does it take you from the time you're shot till the time you can kind of function again?
I'll be honest with you. I mean, it was 6 months before I could even raise my arm. I mean, I had a really good rehab guy at the unit, Scott, and he basically got me back to where I could actually raise my arm and make me feel like maybe I could come back, to doing stuff, but I'll be honest with you, the rehab's ongoing because the bullet went through the brachial complex and it messed up a bunch of nerves. It missed like all the arteries and all that, which if it had nicked one of them, I'd be dead. But it did hit nerves and stuff. And so the pain actually is not here. It's like in my shoulder. And so
Can you get your arm up above your shoulder?
yeah, I mean, I can, it's not as straight as, of course, this arm, but it's pretty good. I mean, it's my new 100%. I'll say that.
There you go.
Yep.
Well, we aren't getting any younger, are we?
No. And I mean, it hurts a little worse kind of every year. So I don't know. I'll be in pretty bad shape probably in 20 years, but
welcome to the club, buddy.
So, so let's talk about how long they keep you on active duty until what point?
So basically, I rehabbed from 2011 until I retired in 13. So I took a job in operations where I was setting up, exercises and whatever while I was rehabbing, and I came on right getting close to 20 years, and they're like, well, I mean, you can retire normally and get 50% retirement and be taxed, or you can retire medically with 70% retirement and no taxes.
Wow. I think I could figure that one out.
I'm not a smart man, but I think I'll take that one. So,
wow.
Yep. So I went ahead and medically retired right at 19 and a half years. And
what percentage did they give you of disability?
So when I first got out, it was 70. And then, cause I'm just like, well, wait a minute, I know people twisted their ankles, got 100, and so, I kind of went back and they reevaluated and looked at my range of motion and plus two, I've got like, I've had to have knee surgery. I had to leap off a building one time that was getting ready to blow up. And so anyway, they found a few more things wrong with me than they thought. And so I'm at 100%. So.
And you earned every bit of it, pal. Just
you're not kidding. That burns me up here, and that our heroes go over and what you went through, and not just you, all the thousands of people before you and after you, and you got to go fight to get that disability.
Yeah, I mean it's a process. I mean, I don't know. I was just like, well, I mean, anyway. So I feel blessed to be where I'm at in life right now, and I don't have any complaints.
Well, you don't get out of this that easy. Hold on a second.
Nope.
So, how many Purple Hearts did you get?
I've got 2.
How many Bronze Stars?
7, and then a couple for valor. I mean, but
hey, don't play it down. This is you are a freaking American hero, brother.
You know how many people?
I know you're being humble and you don't want to toot your own horn.
Look, I just tried to do my part. I mean, it's not about, I don't know. if nobody asked me about this, I wouldn't tell nobody, you know. So I mean,
well, and we're not finished talking to you yet, but I just want to say right now, Morgan and I are so proud to have you on the show. We have a lot of heroes on here, but I mean, you're right there at the top of the pack, brother.
Yeah, man. Well, you can see back here my background too. That's my dad's flag. When he passed away and stuff. You kind of emblematic of the greatest generation. The guys that came back from World War II didn't talk about things. Guys that served in Vietnam that were never treated well by their country, that should have been. And so it's like to talk to guys like you who did the work and don't go out and seek glory. And that's my question. And one thing I wanted to close off with you, I know you got more too, Murph, but I want to talk a little bit about the ethos of guys like you who do not go out and go on the lectures. I mean, don't go out and make a big deal about it. Say, well, hey, it's all about me. Here's my story. I want to talk about, be on the lecture circuit, write books, do movies. I mean, we're not going to mention names or people, but there are people out there from the community who have talked about things that a lot of guys like you would prefer they not talk about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think they have their own demons to have to deal with. To be honest with you, I wouldn't want to be in that boat. If I have to give a presentation or something, it ain't about me. It's about my group I was with. It's us. It's, I mean, I hope this whole thing hasn't been just, it's about me. I'm trying to go, hey, look, this isn't,
Dude, we've had to drag it out of you. Don't tell me.
I know.
And you wanted to go.
It's not a one-man war.
Yeah. In case, first, Your Honor, I'd like to introduce to evidence his first statement and blah, blah, blah. There you go. Just glossing over everything. Blah, blah, blah. We had to unwind it and unpack it. So no, pal, we've had to drag it out of you, which is our way. We screen it. Look, we have not brought people onto the podcast because they're bullshit artists. Steve, you know what I'm talking about too, from San Diego and some other guys. Yeah. And we get asked, hey, we want to do this now. You are the farthest thing from a bullshit artist. In fact, you're one of those guys when we have to drag it out of you as consistently as we have to. It's indicative of the fact is that you've got it in the right perspective, which it's about, I was part of a team. It wasn't about me. It was about our team. And quite frankly, I'm sure you lost some team members too. You'd like there's some guys that you wish you could go out and have a beer with.
Yep.
Well, and just so our listeners know, Kevin didn't reach out to us. Morgan and I and Javier were all represented by United Talent Agency, and Javier and I use UTA Speakers Bureau to book corporate and different events for us. And Dave Buchalter, we give him a shout out. He's our agent, and he gave me a call, and he's like, "Hey, there's a guy you've got to talk to that would be perfect for Game of Crimes." And he started telling me about your military, and I said, "Dave, we're love these guys. I mean, worked with some of your amigos there." I said, "But we're focused on law enforcement." He says, "Oh, that's what you're going to like about this." He was a North Carolina wildlife officer. It's just perfect fit for the show here, and your story is like really none others that we've had on here. We hope to get General Boykin on here at some point to talk about his participation in the Escobar hunt and all that. And he is still just a real, in my opinion, a magnanimous man who has done a lot with his life and has become an ordained minister now. I really respect him for that.
I work with General Boykin's son. I was on President Biden's PSD in Iraq in 2010, and General Boykin's son is Secret Service guy, and so he was running the detail, and we were the cat team for, President, or back then it was Vice President.
Yeah.
Very cool. And so we've got some. I don't know. He'd bring us in and wanted to see if we could throw our hatchets and whatever. Yeah.
Hey, but so I mean that's not the end of your story. So you've rehabbed, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because we've kept you here way too long. And
it's our second, maybe our first longest episode, next to Dave Reichert and the Green River Killer.
Yeah, but now you have gotten into some humanitarian work that I think is just phenomenal.
Yeah,
and this is one thing that Morgan and I we interviewed a lady earlier, Natasha Herzig, here on Game of Crimes, who was a victim of human and sex trafficking. And so we've kind of developed this interest in it now. And then when I got to talking to you on the phone and heard about some of your, I call them adventures that you're on, I think you need to share those, if you don't mind sharing those with our listeners now.
Yep. So I did contract work for about 3 years after I retired. kind of was doing the same thing I did in the military, but
for
just
the USDA. Yeah.
for the USDA. Yeah,
Who would have known they were such a badass organization?
they are, and with a whole lot less support.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I kind of got, I work with a company called Cryptech, and one of the guys that started the company is Josh Cleghorn. He was a little bird pilot, and he used to fly me around, put me on target. So he's one of the owners of Cryptech. I work with him, and so I've been doing that, and I work for SIG, teach some, and I'm an ambassador for SIG Sauer. And this past fall, one of my friends from my Army unit, he calls me up and he goes, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm sitting on the porch having a bourbon and a cigar, and he's like, we kind of need a little help, over in that region that we pulled out of, and so I went over last October, and we ended up pulling quite a few of American citizens, blue passport carrying American citizens out of Afghanistan, helped them get across the border and, back to America, with a lot of support from some of the congressmen and stuff in our country.
Well, wait a minute. I thought we got everybody out. That's what we were told.
Yeah. Well, maybe they just didn't see these folks or something. But
how many are we talking about?
Well, there were, just in my time there, I was doing a little reconnaissance up in that northeast corner of that country, and there were 15 that we actually pulled out, and then there were probably 100 that they were working on getting out when I left. So there was quite a few.
Were they in hiding, or were they being held captive?
No, they were in hiding. We actually, there's several organizations, and Sentinel Group is the group that I actually work with. They are a great group that they're involved with the Tim Tebow Foundation, and it's all about rescuing people and the kids that are being trafficked. So every chance I get, I go and I help those guys. Whether it's down south or over in the Middle East or wherever.
Well, there's a conflict ongoing right now that you've participated in, haven't you?
Yep. So I had a friend contact me about getting some people out of eastern Ukraine back in February, and so I ended up going over there for about a month. We pulled about 200 people out of Kharkiv, Ukraine, got them in vans and pulled them back toward the western part of the country so that they actually could survive, because they would have been killed. And so anyway, we're kind of, every now and then I'll get a call and we'll go and do something good. It feels pretty good to be able to help out.
How do you protect yourself when you're over there like that? Especially, you got Russian forces that don't really give a shit. They've been killing civilians. They've been doing stuff. So how do you protect yourself? Because I can just imagine your wife going, "Here we go again."
Yeah.
Well, in addition to a lot of prayer.
Yeah. So there's a bit of factor right there where, okay, part of the time we're armed and part of the time we weren't, and so,
because if you're armed, they would consider you a combatant, right?
Either way, if you're an American and they get a hold of you, you're a combatant.
Yeah.
So, and I guess it isn't the Russians really; it's the people that don't know you're there. So having a good interpreter and having the forces that you're there to help, some of those guys with you, they can kind of go, "Oh no, these are
good guys. These are the good guys.
Those are good guys." It's not So that's the key right there, is to not just be winging it. Like, hey, I'm gonna wing it and go in here. No, you need a support system. And so we had some pretty good support from the highest levels over there, and so that helped us to actually be successful on that mission.
I tell you what, man, I've got goosebumps just sitting here listening to you. It's and as a fellow American, I can't tell you how proud I am of you and the other guys that you've worked with, and some of the we have in common, some friends that we have in common, and we're tickled to death to have you on here. This is, I predict now, this is going to be one of the highest rated podcasts we've ever done.
Well, if it weren't for the fact that both Murph and I have small bladders, I mean, we'd keep this thing going. I'll tell you, there's so many stories we could get into, and this is unique too, because for one thing, we're at 4 hours and about 43 minutes now. We have gone on longer than what we anticipated. But the other thing, though, too, is there is so much stuff here that we could not even dive into. I mean, we spent at least a good first 2 hours just going through your SEAL training and DevGru and just getting to that point before we started getting into the wildlife stuff, before we started getting into the, what was that called again, Murph? Special Mission Unit, something about Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta. It rhymes with, it rhymes with Smelta. Hey, by the way, Delta Dental is my dental company too. So we've got something in common. I'm a member of Delta too.
Hey, me too. That's my dental company.
Yeah.
So.
Hey.
Well, hey, I got a coffee mug.
And it doesn't exist, Murph. Doesn't exist. You bought that in the black market somewhere.
Well, back then they didn't. Nobody would even acknowledge. The government wouldn't acknowledge that group.
No, I was doing some training. I got the first set of business cards from guys from the No Such Agency. The first time they were ever allowed to hand out business cards.
Wow.
Still a collector item. It's like they didn't know what. I said, you guys don't know how to do business cards. Yeah, this is the first time we've ever done them.
Yeah.
I think I've got a shot glass from them up here.
Yeah, somewhere up there. Hey, but seriously, no, the time has flown by, and we just got to figure out a way. I'll tell you what. Here's what we need to do. This is your new set of orders here. You retired as what, a master sergeant?
I did.
All right, Master Sergeant, new set of orders. We're going to bring you back, but we want to talk about the operations that you guys are doing to bring people out from Ukraine, some of the stuff in that area that you used to operate in. Because what we'd love to do is talk, because to me, those are, it dovetails into nicely into what we're doing, because those are crimes. What the Taliban is doing to their people, what Russia is doing to the Ukrainians. It just, to me, and quite frankly, they're war crimes. What they've done to these folks are war crimes, and we've got to show the good work that's being done. So we'll cut your order soon. We'll send them to you. Don't worry, there's no PT test involved in this. No water.
It's just a little compass course. Don't worry.
Yeah. and we're gonna come out there and meet. So it's just a little ways down the road from where you're at. We'll all meet. So
okay,
we'll be in Greensboro.
I got a place you guys can stay. I got a friend's house. It's close here. So.
Oh man, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna be in Greensboro next week. We're speaking at a conference there, not too far away.
I was just down in Raleigh actually. So who knew we were so close? But I just need to know where my fallback position is. Should shit happen up here in Northern Virginia, fallback position. We've got a place in North Carolina there, Murph.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Yep.
There's and two, we know that we have kept you much longer. We're going to shut up here in just a second, but thank your wife for allowing us to take up 5 hours of your time, because I know she's probably in there going, "Are you taking me to lunch or what?"
She came out with a note a minute ago that said something, and I didn't have a clue what it meant, and I was like, I just shook my head, and she walked back in.
You're a wise man. My wife is sitting over here too. She went out and did some shopping, and I said, "Hey, we'll go out to eat in a minute." She goes, "That's a good idea."
Yeah. Well, we got the pool builders are here. We got an electrician coming in. We got some guy wanting to sell
them.
solar
This is
panels,
more important.
She's dealing with all.
Yeah, tell those people to go off. Just
they're always the heroes. They're always the heroes.
Hey, well, dude, I got to tell you, people can't see this, but this is me saluting you, sailor and soldier. Thank you for your service to the country. But more as well as that, but you bled for this country. You lost friends for this country, but you're still doing stuff for this country. No matter what's going on in the world, you're still doing stuff that's helping people out. And that's because you're at heart, you're still a warrior, brother. So this is us saluting you.
Hey, and right back at you, man. Thank y'all.
I think the good Lord gives us all special gifts. He gave you one of service to mankind. I can't say thank you enough, man, for everything you've done. I hope that we get the opportunity to meet in person someday. Won't even send you a little gift in the mail here just to waste your time.
I hear you.
But a true honor, true
Murph,
American
the last time you sent
American
something through the mail, they
love.
returned it because it was the wrong size. You sent him one of your used thongs, so don't do that.
Don't tell him. Don't tell him.
Well, hey, I appreciate you guys actually thinking of me to have me on here. And
are you kidding, man? What we've done is paled in comparison to what you've done, and it's like we're just honored that you would spend your time with us, so we can our goal is we want to let everybody know, and just what kind of heroes there are in this community, men and women who serve, day in and day out, that their stories never see the light of day because they have the warrior ethos like you, which is, it isn't about doing something so you can go write a book about it or have a movie done about you. It's about doing it because that's what you were born to do.
All right. Well, I appreciate it.
All right.
God bless you, Kevin, and your family.
Don't go anywhere. You guys hang on for just a second. Everybody else, stay tuned for the debrief. If you weren't strapped in, like you said, and holding on for this ride, my God, I'm still at a loss for words. Just 2 hours, we hadn't even got through his SEAL training and what he did and the inside story of that. What a ride.
You know, our regular listeners know that Javier and I had the opportunity to work with SEAL Team 6 members as well as Delta Force members when we were chasing Pablo Escobar.
Special Mission Unit.
Yeah, same thing. Same when we lived in Medellin. And these guys are truly the studs of the world. In our shows that we do around the world, we make a point of telling everybody if we're ever kidnapped, those are the groups we want to come and get us because we've seen what they can do. But listen to Kevin's story and what he went through in Bud's training out there in Coronado Island. I'm thinking, what kind of mindset do you have to continue to do that and not say, screw this, I've had enough?
Well, it's the same mindset that because some recruiter told you to, you cut down an 8-foot log and you carry it everywhere you go in the back roads.
Well, be careful with Kevin. You tell him to do something, he's going to go do it.
I know, but my first thought was, now he's screwing with you, isn't it? Kevin go, no, and that, Southern, no, he was really serious. It's like, damn, if you catch me walking around a back road carrying an 8-foot log, have me committed.
Again, one of the most motivational interviews we've ever done. Kevin, just so proud of you and your service to our country. And as I said in the intro, I just hope to have the opportunity to meet you sometime in person, just to shake your hand, tell you personally, thank you for what you've done for our country. We have heroes on here every freaking episode, but I don't know. It's just,
there are some that are in a different category. He's in a different category. I mean, what he did, and for as long as he did it, and the things he endured, it's not just going through SEAL training.
Right.
Then it's going through this, the SEAL tactical training. Then it's going through SEAL Team 6 training. Then it's all the weapons training. Then it's the pre-workups. Then it's doing the law enforcement thing, going through their academy. Then it's saying, hey, I want to become part of the Special Mission Unit, also known as Delta, going through the Delta training. This guy has done more shit in a smaller amount of time than most people do for their entire life.
Absolutely. As I understand it, the only publicly recognized individual that was a member of SEAL Team 6 and the U.S. Army's Delta Group.
Special Mission Unit.
Delta Force.
Special Mission Unit.
Hoorah.
Hoorah. That is the Marines. Hooah is
and
Army.
This is for you.
McHooyah. Anyway, but I tell you what, we were honored to have him on, and it was like, we couldn't believe when we got done how long this episode was. So, hey guys, we just want to say thank you. Thank you guys for being a part of the show. So if you enjoyed that episode, head on over to Apple Podcasts, give us that 5 stars. It really helps out. Also, Spotify has the same 5 stars, really helps us out in the rankings getting discovered. Also, head on over to GameOfCrimesPodcast.com for more information about the show. That's where we put pictures, anything, people have books, our merch. Also, follow us on that thing called social media. At Game of Crimes on Twitter, at Game of Crimes Podcast on Facebook and the Instagram. And just head over to PayPal.com, use our email, gameofcrimespodcast@gmail.com or paypal.me/Game of Crimes, whatever makes it easier for you to support the show. But where do you got to be 3 times, Murph?
Got to be on Patreon with us. Come over and check us out. You know what? And you had mentioned, I think, in the intro about that we've got the Cali edition of DEA Narcos out now. And it's a total of 12 episodes. Is that
15.
Right? Oh, 15 episodes.
And the 15th episode is actually a 2-hour special. So, yeah, you get 16 hours of content you will not hear anywhere else in the world. I guarantee you.
Yeah, because it wasn't on the show Narcos. If you've seen the Cali edition, which was season 3, you got to come on and listen to what Chris and David.
You got to listen to episode 12 when it comes out. Episode 12 is really about taking one for the team.
Oh, you're not kidding. You're not kidding. But it's the things that, people think Javier and I were crazy because of what we did against the Escobar and the Medellin cartel on that investigation.
Well, that was crazy.
Wait till you hear what these guys went through. I think they were crazy.
You were crazy, and this is batshit crazy.
There you go. You got to come and check us out. So just give us a shot on Patreon. If you don't like it, just hang in there with us. It'll get better. If you got suggestions that you'd like us to do differently or try something different, let us know.
As long as it's legal, moral, or slightly unethical, we're fine with it. Just don't ask Murph to wear a thong. We will not.
We have standards. They're kind of low, but
they're low, but we have standards. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, hey, look, this is a way to wrap up a fabulous show. Again, Kevin can't see this once again, but this is us saluting him, saying thank you for your service, sailor and soldier. The only public recognized member of both DevGru and Special Mission Unit, also known as SEAL Team 6 and Delta. And what a great time. So we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. And once again, for playing the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all for the SEALs and the Delta operators out there. Yes, I publicly acknowledge them. Game of Crimes.